All right, we have some sad news to pass along here. The founding member of KISS has died. In a family statement, Ace's family is saying in part that they are reflecting on all of his incredible life achievements. His memory will continue to live on forever. His career spanned over 50 years. He formed the iconic rock band KISS alongside Peter Criss, Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons in the early 1970s. As lead guitarist, he took on a couple of personas. You might remember Space Ace. Later there was Space Man as well. Frehley was inducted into the Hall of Fame, or the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with KISS in 2014. He was only 74 years old.
Hello, wonderful person, this is Anton, and in this video, we're going to be discussing some of the most peculiar discoveries coming from some strange objects referred to as brown dwarfs. But I guess more specifically, a recent discovery by the James Webb Space Telescope that discovered a very specific molecule that suddenly changes a lot of things for astrobiology. And in this case, we're discussing a molecule we've actually talked about approximately 5 years ago, referred to as phosphine. Something that for a very long time was believed to be what's known as a biosignature. And so today we're going to discuss a kind of a profound puzzle for astronomers and atmospheric chemists that technically directly affects our search for extraterrestrial life. And that's because, based on the recent study we're going to be discussing today, and specifically based on this study you can find in the description, what we have observed on this distant cool brown dwarf, referred to as Wolf 1130c, is something that, according to our best scientific models, should be actually here. So in that sense, this is an exciting confirmation of something that was predicted before. But the bizarre part is that until recently, and really until now, every single observation of virtually every other brown dwarf, or any gas planet we've observed with the James Webb, were actually suggesting that some of these predictions and some of these models of the existence of phosphine in these planets was maybe incorrect. And so there is a kind of a paradoxical discovery here that we do need to explore, and mostly from two different perspectives. From the perspectives of astrobiology and the search for extraterrestrial life, and from the perspective of planetary scientists that have always predicted certain molecules in certain types of planets. But first, we do need to briefly cover the concept of brown dwarfs, because this is something that is super bizarre and something that we do not have in the solar system. And so what exactly are these objects? Well, sometimes they're referred to as failed stars, a kind of a middle object between the largest gas planets like Jupiter and some of the smallest true stars that we often refer to as red dwarfs, with pretty much most of the discovered brown dwarfs having a mass of about 13 to maybe 80 masses of Jupiter, and some of them even contain enough mass to initiate early nuclear reactions. For example, some of these objects are briefly able to fuse specific types of heavy hydrogen such as deuterium, but in most cases often lack mass to continuously sustain the reaction or to fuse normal hydrogen that most stars rely on in order to produce energy. And so because most of them do not contain a stable way of generating energy, a typical brown dwarf is just going to cool down over billions of years, gradually dimming as they age. And in a lot of cases, when we actually do find a brown dwarf that's somewhat cold and somewhat dark, it actually does imply an extremely high age, usually billions of years old, and sometimes even almost as old as the universe. And we've discussed these objects in some of the previous videos, and we do know quite a lot about them, mostly because some of the most fascinating such objects, the binary system referred to as Roman 16, is one of our closest neighbors. In terms of distances, they're basically right after Alpha Centauri, which is why we have these beautiful pictures of these objects taken over the years. But the specific brown dwarf we're discussing today is a little bit farther away from us, and you can see the image of this brown dwarf right here. This is about 54 light years away from Earth and is essentially a triple system. Here we have a cold M-type sub-dwarf star and an ultramassive white dwarf orbiting each other. And at a slightly farther away distance, there is a cold brown dwarf companion, Wolf 1130c. And it's believed that this system is very old, very likely over 10 billion years old in total, with this particular brown dwarf potentially being one of the oldest known to us. But chances are that the binary system will eventually produce a Type 1 supernova, which at some point might result in the destruction of the brown dwarf, or at least cause it to change dramatically, and eventually kick it out of the system. Although this is not expected to happen for at least 6 billion years. But either way, this is definitely quite a unique system. But because the stars here are so old, they're also relatively poor in metals, Essentially, they mostly contain hydrogen and helium, and not so much of everything else. And this chemical composition may be the key to this new discovery, because the molecule we're interested in is, of course, phosphine. The molecule consists of phosphorus and 3 hydrogens. And this is a pretty well-known molecule on Earth, where technically it's also kind of toxic and quite flammable. But intriguingly, it's also mostly produced by anaerobic life. Here we're talking about various organisms that survive without oxygen and very often rely on decaying matter in order to produce nutrition. And so since biological sources dominate the production of phosphine on planet Earth, for an extremely long time, this was proposed to be a definitive biosignature, a potential chemical indicator of some kind of life somewhere out there. And this is exactly what happened a few years back when there was a potential detection of phosphine on Venus. And though at first this was a preliminary discovery, it was also redetected again back in 2024, which, as you can imagine, became very exciting for astrobiologists because it may have suggested some kind of an existence of life on Venus, and specifically in the Venusian atmosphere. But the phosphine's identity as a biosignature is deeply complicated even in the solar system. And that's because gas giants like Jupiter and Saturn seem to also contain significant amounts of phosphine that's been detected many years ago. And that, of course, creates a bit of a paradox. Either Jupiter and Saturn also have a lot of microbial life, which I guess maybe could happen, or phosphine is also produced through some other means, and very likely because of these extremely highly pressurized and very hot conditions inside of gas giants. And that was, of course, the main explanation for many years. So here, intense heat and pressure causes phosphine to form naturally with very powerful atmospheric forces, then bringing the gas up, where it can then be detected by various probes. And eventually, sunlight destroys it, because this gas is not very stable. But these early observations from Jupiter and Saturn became the foundation for the observations of other gas giants and, of course, brown dwarfs. And so in these models, the prediction was that phosphine should also be present in the low-temperature, hydrogen-rich atmospheres of various brown dwarfs. And especially because we expect them to mix even better, and so they should technically show even more phosphine. Yet for many years, none of these brown dwarfs, even the ones super close to us, seemed to show any signs of phosphine at all. And that was kind of bizarre. And bizarre basically until now. So let's take a look at this new discovery. Here, by taking spectral observations in the infrared light, James Webb was able to reveal very specific spectral lines. And while here at 4.3 micrometers, there seems to be a very strong absorption feature. So basically something seems to be absorbing light coming from this brown dwarf. And that something, based on the spectral analysis, is currently suggested to be phosphine. And actually these spectral absorptions are very similar to what's been seen on Jupiter before. And this was an extremely clear detection that would be very difficult to interpret as anything else. But there's obviously not a lot of it. Currently the estimate suggests approximately 100 parts per billion, or about 0.00001%. And it's really this high abundance that's technically is also kind of strange. Because here it's consistent with disequilibrium atmospheric chemistry models, or same models based on Jupiter and Saturn that predicted this deep vertical mixing that should be bringing phosphine to the surface. Yet once again, this is the only brown dwarf with these detections. None of the other exoplanets or gas giants or brown dwarfs consistently showed any similar data. Or if there was a possible detection, it was usually hundreds of times lower than predicted. And one example that's mentioned by the scientists here is WISE 0855-0714. Here there was a preliminary detection of phosphine, but it seems to be at least 200 times lower than expected, which suggests that these recent observations from Wolf 1130c are really odd. Despite validating atmospheric models and predictions from years ago, it looks completely different from every single brown dwarf we've seen. And that means that our understanding of phosphorus chemistry and chemical dynamics may be incomplete or incorrect. But right now scientists do have at least two potential propositions on what's probably happening here. First, once again, this is a metal-poor object, and this low metallicity might be the dominant factor. And so because this object contains mostly hydrogen and mostly helium and not a lot of other stuff, here phosphorus might just create slightly different reactions. Now in a typical gas giant, or maybe in a typical brown dwarf containing a lot of different stuff, there's also going to be a lot of oxygen. And in certain conditions, phosphorus might prefer to combine with oxygen to form phosphorus trioxide, effectively
Jesus Christ, what is happening, dude?
Reaction
Wow.
That will create phosphine. But in the low metallicity environment, like around this brown dwarf, there might be just not enough oxygen, and instead a lot of phosphorus.
Look at this, dude. Look what you did to yourself.
Phosphine. And at the same time, because this object is also not going to contain a lot of carbon dioxide, pretty much
how is he turning that sharp, by the way? How do they turn that? Oh my God, what is happening right now, dude?
With a much better picture of the atmosphere.
Look at all of them, dude. What the fuck is happening?
Phosphine signals, making the observations much more difficult. So basically here, phosphine is easier to detect. But on top of this, the second suggestion is also that for some
how are you turning so sharply, dude? How are you turning so sharply, dude?
1.7 times amount of phosphorus compared to the
and now my car is not turning.
Ancient partners. One of the stars here is
come on. I don't even know how you're getting through here, dude.
Old stars. And because this white dwarf is in a binary system, there's actually a chance that in the past it produced.
I don't even know how you're turning that sharp, dude.
Essentially explosions.
I don't know how you're turning that sharp, dude.
With its partner. And processes like nova can technically produce a lot of phosphorus, polluting the entire system. And so a lot of this phosphorus on the brown dwarf could have come from these earlier nova. Or alternatively, it could also have come from the galactic disk itself. And that's because this brown dwarf and this entire system seem to be located in the region of the Milky Way with very ancient materials, which might just provide more phosphorus for these objects compared to other stars close to the solar system. But yeah, in terms of why this object is so different, right now there's no exact explanation yet. But nevertheless, the confirmation of phosphine on this brown dwarf is
look at it, dude.
First of all, it seems to be consistent with previous planetary models, and so it definitely shows us that some of the previous models may be correct after all. But second of all, it definitively confirms that phosphine may not be a biosignature after all. But it also suggests that certain planetary models need to be re-evaluated because none of the other brown dwarfs have any of this. And so this major inconsistency is very important for planetary models. But much more importantly for astrobiology and for the search for extraterrestrial life, here the presence of phosphine on Jupiter, Saturn, and this object almost definitively suggests that phosphine is currently a very unreliable sign of potential life. So basically it is not a good biosignature, even though this was the claim that I think I even made myself something like 10 years ago in one of the older videos. And so despite earlier...
Oh my God, did Anton say he was wrong about something? No. No, Anton did not just say he was completely wrong about something. No.
I mean, it's still possible.
No.
Which would obviously suggest that maybe all of these objects seem to contain
something else. No, couldn't have been. No.
But at this point, it just becomes speculation.
You were claiming something as fact that you had no idea was fact?
For how phosphine could form in these planets. And so the discovery on Wolf 30C proves that non-biological and purely chemical
you were completely and utterly totally wrong.
And seem to generate spectral signatures we observe. And so for astrobiologists, this is a pretty big discovery that kind of invalidates a lot of previous assumptions about phosphine. But for atmospheric scientists and for planetary scientists, this also suggests that certain models need to be reworked because something here just does not add up. And so here we definitely need some kind of a deeper understanding of planetary dynamics and chemical reactions inside brown dwarfs and gas giants. But I guess for now at least, that's kind of all we know. We'll definitely discuss phosphine in some of the future videos once there are some additional discoveries or maybe some other propositions. But until then, check out some of the previous videos about Venus and previous discoveries from brown dwarfs in some of the videos in the description. Until then, thank you for watching, subscribe, come back tomorrow to learn something else, support this channel on Patreon where you can find additional videos without any ads and can DM me directly, or by joining the channel membership that grants you early access and a few additional videos. You can also buy the Wonderful Person t-shirt in the description below. Stay wonderful, I'll see you tomorrow, and as always, bye-bye.
Man, you on one. Stupid ass Mark. Yeah. Great way to do it, man.
That's all you got? That's cool. Give me no, baby. You want this to get... That's very kind of you.
A federal grand jury today indicted former National Security Advisor John Bolton, who worked under Donald Trump's first administration, on charges related to the use and retention of classified information and documents that he had received while he was in office in the White House in 2019. Now, this information came to light after the information was found to have been hacked. One of his personal email servers that he used to transfer some of this information was reportedly hacked by a foreign entity. I don't know if that's a government or another bad actor, but that information somehow ended up in the wrong hands, leading to a further investigation into John Bolton and the notes that he may have taken. That led to the raid that we saw earlier this year in August, when FBI officials raided John Bolton's home in Bethesda, Maryland, as well as his office in Washington, D.C. During those raids, investigators found, according to search warrants, information and classified documents related to a number of secret and classified information concerning weapons of mass destruction, concerning the U.S. mission to the United Nations, and a lot of other top secret details that really shouldn't have been out there. It's unclear how much of that information may have actually ended up in a foreign hand, but it's important to consider when looking at this, what did John Bolton do to actually keep this information from getting hacked, from being released? Even if he didn't intend to have this information leak its way into the public environment, he still is responsible for keeping that information safe. And he really shouldn't even have the information to begin with.
Take me back to my crib.
Hello, guys and gals, me Mutahar, and, Charlie broke YouTube yesterday, ladies and gentlemen. He uploaded a video called I'm Not Turning It Back On, and, I thought for a second, whoa, the website wasn't even working well yesterday. I think Down Detector had like 400,000 goddamn results about it, like just people reporting, YouTube is down! You tried watching a video on your mobile, it was just constant looping, the videos wouldn't even load up, error 404, errors that I've never even seen before. Started popping. Obviously, I think somebody at YouTube probably pushed something wrong to the server and they scrambled to fix it, but I'm going to use the funny example and say that, Moist Critical ended up taking down the actual site very briefly. But why was this a situation that kind of broke the internet yesterday? It's actually something that I kind of want to talk about because I have been seeing this happen so much over the course of years, just to see YouTube evolve, and how people accept things. It used to be back in the day that taking a sponsor was a grave sin. It used to be back in the day that if you were a live streamer on Justin TV or anything of that nature, if you took even donations from your actual community, that would just be one of the worst sins you could ever do on YouTube, on the internet in general. And now it's in order to make it sustainable for the average creator, for the average person, or somebody starting out, they really do rely on Patreons, donations, and everything. But you know who's exempt from that list? Some of the biggest players in the game. People that are making millions, hundreds of thousands of views and everything on and so forth. Now, the thing is, I'm always one of those people where, when it comes to greed, by instance, I think greed is one of the worst sins that you can have. Greed, what is it, gluttony almost, in a lot of ways, right? Where you just constantly have to have more and more and more, and you just can never be happy with what you have. Now, Charlie showcased his earnings yesterday, and for YouTube, it was $35.8 million in the lifetime. Now, obviously, that includes everything. Watch page ads, shorts ads, supers and gifts, affiliate programs, and connected stores. And if you add in Twitch, I think it's $4 to $5 million. So overall, the guy made 40 million, which, you know, pales in comparisons, I'm pretty sure, to his, like, Hunger Games royalty checks. Obviously, this is some good, like, you can buy a few cartons of eggs, if you will, in today's day and age, but that's not a small amount of money, okay? It's a pretty good chunk of change to have. It's generational wealth, it's life-changing money, it's money that, if you have it, you probably couldn't burn through every single bit of it, your kids could probably not burn through every single bit of it, and your grandkids could probably not burn through every single bit of it. Unless, of course, inflation takes the most sky-high fucking route ever, or you give birth to, like, absolute degenerate offspring that will just burn through your fucking wealth pool by buying the most obnoxiously stupid shit. Now, one of the things that I've always, like, admired about Charlie Asmongold, and really it's one of the things that I feel kind of tethers, you know, me to the earth and a lot of stuff, is that, you know, at the end of the day, these are people that can make a substantial amount of cash, and ultimately it never really changes their life. You know, for me, I was happy when I made substantially less, and I was still happy when I made money. Now, money is never something that makes you more happier than anything. If you're somebody that's happy with the means that you live in, meaning that you're happy with the people around you, for me, dude, all I love to do is maybe buy an extra game console every year and play a couple video games. For me, that's where my luxuries sort of stop, okay? So making any amount of money, even if it's like a fraction of this, is already winning. To give you an idea, guys, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that, like, I read from time to time is how much an average American makes. So apparently, according to the National Library of Medicine and the Social Security Administration, the lifetime earnings of a U.S. citizen over the age of 50 from 20 to 69, it depends, right? It could be like 1.85 million or 1.1 million for women, right? 1.85 for men, 1.1 for women. So obviously, when you look into, again, things like, you know, educational background, you know, if you get like graduate degrees, obviously you're earning up to like 3.05 gross, 2.68 net, and for women it's 1.86 in gross, 1.69 in net, okay? So yeah, it's still substantially more money than, you know, people who work their ass off every day and come home and literally, you know, when I see any streamer on the internet bitch about their life, like, oh, streaming is so fucking tough on me, man. You know, I gotta make a video every now and then. It's always like, shut the fuck up. You have one of the most cushiony lives imaginable, and you're still somehow bitching about it. Now, for anybody that's in like that mid-tier, like lower-tier creator, and again, I don't want to say these things to be mean about it, but if you're somebody that's like a average content creator, somebody that, you know, it really is, you're kind of living paycheck to paycheck doing this, and or maybe you have some amount of money to save, taking donations is obviously something that is a pretty, like, accepted thing these days. It's the only way for this entire platform to be sustainable. If you're not somebody that, you know, I guess at this point is streaming almost every day, taking in some donations or subscribers, then yeah, making sure that your rent payment or mortgage payment or, you know, paying for your groceries is going to be fucking difficult. But not when you're at the top 1% of content creators. Now, Charlie showed this amount of money, which obviously is pretty mouthwatering to a lot of people, but it's not surprising, okay? Charlie's been somebody who's at the top of his game, and I'm somebody that's been watching him for quite a long time, even before I actually ever really make content. You know, he was really around on YouTube for a long time. And I think one of the videos that kind of blew him into, like, you know, fame was like being on Ray William Johnson. He was playing like rock or something. And even before then, he was like making fucking, what, Gears montages? I'm somebody that has watched him from the beginning, and somebody that has absolutely been donating a chunk of his money, especially at the beginning, primarily to charities. Now, what Charlie decided to do after showcasing this money is that before he ever uploaded this video, he showcased that he was turning off donations and whatnot to his channel, right? Anything fan-funded. Not necessarily advertisements or channel sponsorships of anything of that nature, but generally the ability for the viewer to give the creator money. Now, you know, honest to God, like, to me, when I look at the history of YouTube content creation, it used to be a grave sin, like I said, in order to take a sponsorship. It used to be a grave sin in order to take money from your fans. But now, it's, for a lot of people in that, you know, day-to-day grind, it is the only sustainable way to keep this a actual career path. But obviously for Charlie, is like, he felt a little bit bad. Now, I saw some pretty dog shit takes about this, so I want to kind of read them really quickly. Gets insanely rich, keeps it a secret for many years. once he knows he's set for life, reveals he's actually a millionaire. The guy acted like it's a Machiavellian plan. Like, bro, if you couldn't figure out the fact that one of the largest creators on YouTube, consistently wasn't already fucking rich or a multimillionaire, it's like going to like a fucking sports game and looking at like one of the biggest players on the field for like one of the biggest teams in the entire bracket and thinking, man, is that guy rich? You know, that actor that I'm seeing in this big Hollywood production, I wonder if that guy's actually rich, you know? I'm beginning to suspect. You know, I'm sorry, like, I guess for some people, they really have been hitting the stupid branch on the way down on every single fucking step. Guys, I feel bad. Disables monetization to make it look like he's a saint, which proves no matter what you do on the internet, you can't make everyone happy. So at some point, you have to realize you can either crash and burn or just stop giving a fuck. And usually stopping giving a fuck is the best way to live. But to go back to the point, obviously there's a lot of misinformation spread about this. You know, people really started going at Charlie's ass. I'm glad he finally realized after making 40 million, it didn't feel right. Incredible bravery. Now, the thing about it is, he's not turned off the ads on his channel. It literally is just fan funding and donations. And the thing about it is, it's something that I do tend to agree. Now, I don't know if you guys have been noticing it, especially if you're like a creator. You probably notice that YouTube has been pushing you a lot in order to take like memberships and donations and any of that, not donations necessarily, but making like members only content. And I don't know how valuable it is. Again, I only do YouTube necessarily because like it is just a fun thing at the end of the day. Like it is just a place for me to, that's why my videos are kind of just like me talking to the camera and having a good time. But I've never been one to necessarily jump into the nitty-gritty of the algorithm, so to speak. I mean, I understand it, obviously doing it for so long, but one of the things that YouTube has pushed is something about, like, members-only content, where, like, you know, they want to get people into, like, this members-only gated community for themselves, which I guess maybe YouTube's trying to, like, cash in onto the Patreon market in some capacity. But for me, I just don't understand the concept of making content on the internet and amassing, you know, a following and then immediately putting up content that is paywalled, even if it's a limited time paywall, so that most of your obvious fan base can't watch the footage or watch the content until you decide to somewhat release it down the road. I feel like putting up artificial monetary roadblocks is so pointless, because ultimately at the end, I would say instead of being a member to my channel or donating to me, it might be better for you to just buy YouTube Premium so that you can help the entire YouTube ecosystem and get more benefits onto your account on the platform globally, as opposed to just one channel on the internet. Now, it's something that I obviously understand, like, fans love to support content creators. There's almost like a parasocial, like, sort of hook that people put into their audience, where I guess it's like, hey, you know, supporting me is cool, you're part of this community, part of a family, but ultimately, at the end, you know, if you're a top-tier content creator, especially somebody at the levels of Moist Critical, which, again, he's not even the largest. You've got people far larger than him, like Asmongold, for instance. You want to talk about like really, really effective monetization of your YouTube platform, you're probably looking at tech channels like Linus, for instance, where it's just done at a far more efficient and much more grand level than you can imagine, right? When you start to see content creators have like teams or just content creators that are amassing a massive amount of viewership, it really should not be a shock to you that they're living far better. They're earning far more than most people could ever imagine. It's kind of like looking at the entertainment industry and looking at somebody making like $50-60 million on a contract and going, whew, that is more money than I will ever see in my life. And it makes no sense to think, let me give that person $20, $50, or $100. It's one of the things where I 100% vehemently agree with Charlie, and I feel like the only people that are getting mad about this are probably individuals who are also top streamers as well, that love that parasocial hook. Like, give me your Twitch Prime, give me, I don't know if YouTube has the equivalent YouTube Prime thing, but, you know, give me your Twitch Prime, give me donations, let's run sub-marathons. One of the goofiest things that I've ever seen is when, like, super large streamers run, like, subathons, where, again, it's mostly just boiling down to e-begging in front of their audience to run these sub-trains, when really subathons are mostly meant for, like, you know, the average content creator who literally is doing this almost paycheck to paycheck. For them, it's literally, hey, let me spend like 4 or 5 a week of making content, being on stream, being the professional bozo that I am. Because at the end of the day, every single one of us on YouTube, regardless of what your ego says or not, we're all just fucking clowns, okay? We are all clowns that got supremely lucky doing what we do on the internet. Simple as that. And whatever money we do make, no matter how little or small, is something that we should always be completely fucking thankful for. And, you know, ultimately, in the end, it's never the audience's responsibility to provide a living for the actual content creator. At the end of the day, if you can't make it work, in my opinion, without, like, you know, if you can't make it work on your own, this probably isn't the place for you. And again, if, you know, you are somebody that's sitting there and you are streaming and earning donations, there's a big difference between the average content creator that needs the donation very clearly to pay their rent versus, obviously, guys like Charlie that are earning millions of dollars a year. You know, even somebody like me, I'm not anywhere near like Charlie's, I would say, like viewership or any of that stuff. But even for me, you know, the earnings are in the 6 to 7 figures. So it's like, you know, if you're ever wondering, Muda, can I give you the money? You don't really ever need to. In fact, if anything, I'm probably the one that is least needing of money, okay? Generally speaking, you know, we've earned enough money on this platform in order to invest it properly, in order to make sure it lasts longer than we probably ever will, okay? Unless, you know, there's some severe financial
that's what my father-in-law thought, bro.
Which is not the audience's responsibility.
Yeah, be careful.
You know, again, like I said, like I showed you earlier, you know, when you look at the average American salary, the average American makes $1 to $2 million throughout the course of their life. And for the average content creator, I will tell you right now, especially the largest content creators, they've cleared that amount of money probably in about a year.
The house
maybe
is
less
$500,000.
than a year.
Wow.
And to see people complain about that, it's one of the reasons why, like, I was really on the crypto scam ass, especially with some really large content creators like a few years ago, mostly because I knew how much I made, I knew how much these people made, and they were still willing to scam their audience with crypto scams, even though if you looked at their average AdSense earnings, just the money they made through the course of their lifetime, there would be no reason for them to scam their audience other than pure greed and pure gluttony, just pure constant need for money. You know, ultimately, the end, ladies and gentlemen, Charlie kind of did a soft flex, but ultimately he really did expose what is a huge, I guess, unknown thing in the creator economy. That, yes, the largest content creators are fucking hella loaded. There's a reason why people like Shaquille O'Neal are salivating at looking at some streamers and how much they fucking make. Because even if you take out fan funding, the amount of money made on ad sales, the amount of money made on corporate sponsorships is fucking insane, okay? It is what it is. But ladies and gentlemen, that's really what I wanted to say. I wanted to add into this a little bit because it's something that I've seen for God knows how long. You know, I've seen this platform and the online space evolve. I've kind of just grown up with it, you know? Like, seeing us go from, like, you know, getting a donation is such a sin to, you know, running entire subathons on our audiences is wild to see. But, again, my real issue, and I think Charlie's real issue, and I think most people's real issue, is when you see people at the top kind of like pretend to be in the same financial situation as their fans, or people that, you know, kind of hide the fact that ultimately they are substantially far more well off than their audiences will ever be, and still constantly fucking begging for money and constantly trying to harness those prime subs. If you want to donate money, donate to a good charitable cause. A lot of people in the world that need good food. There's a lot of people in the world that are war-torn right now that need your assistance. There's a lot of people in the world that just need assistance. And you might as well donate to an actual charity that will give money to people that need it. Or you can always donate that money to a streamer that is
right
not
here,
as
dude.
large as
Right through this intersection.
somebody like me,
Right here.
even though I'm not fucking large in any capacity, but you don't have to give money to any of us. When in reality, there's a lot more content creators in the middle of the road, people that only ever upload once a month, people that, you know, literally stream to, you know, the hundreds of people that they're thankful for. But, you know, those are the people that need the financial assistance the most. It really is seeking some of those content creators out, seeing if you are willing to support them financially, then those are the people that deserve that support the most. Not the fucking streamers at the top that are already making stacks of cash and continue. But yeah, that's all I really wanted to say. Anyways, a lot of content coming out towards gaming stuff, and Microsoft Windows has just turned every computer.
Dude, that's impossible how fast he's going through here. Come on, stop. Stop. Yeah. That's impossible. He just flew through there, dude. Right over the surface of the road. That is wrong. Come on, stop. Oh, wow.
Fortunately, the fire broke out on the eve of the first liturgical
What
feast
the
of St. Michael
fuck,
of
dude?
Christ, which takes place on October 12th. The saint, known as God's influencer, was canonized on September 7th and became the first saint.
No, dude, did you see how first place just glid across all that? Going impossibly fast. Computer is going way faster than humanly possible, dude.
I will not vote for a candidate that takes $1
This
from
is
AIPAC.
crazy.
It's interesting.
Wow.
It's interesting. I haven't thought about AIPAC.
Watch.
And it's interesting. You're like the first to bring up AIPAC.
Excuse me,
in
watch.
years.
Watch.
Is it interesting?
What the
That was California Governor Gavin Newsom malfunctioning as he was being asked a question that he didn't expect and didn't really seem prepared to answer. Now, Newsom malfunctioned and said the word interesting a total of 8 times after he was confronted on the topic of AIPAC and the Israel lobby. Just to give you a little bit of background, Democratic voters have really soured on the issue of Israel. Okay, they are not supportive of what Israel has been carrying out in Gaza, in the West Bank, in much of the Middle East, to be quite frank, and have now been paying closer attention to whether the politicians they've been favorable toward are being funded by the Israel lobby. And so Democratic lawmakers, state and local leaders, you're now on notice. If you're taking AIPAC money, you're gonna be asked about it. And try to do better than what we're about to hear from Gavin Newsom.
Look how fast he is, dude. He's flying.
A candidate that takes $1 from AIPAC. It's interesting.
He is flying.
I haven't thought about AIPAC. And it's interesting. You're like the first to bring up AIPAC in years, which is interesting. Why did I say that?
What's happening here?
Okay, which is just interesting. Listen, it's interesting you say that. JPAC perhaps more, but AIPAC less and less. Okay, fair enough, which is just interesting. What's interesting about it? That it's just interesting as you bring up AIPAC that it hasn't been part of. I'm just
I didn't
honestly
barely hit my brake, dude.
Okay, I love this so much for so many different reasons. So obviously Newsom
Look how fast
idiotic,
2 is going.
But for those who don't know, the podcast that he's appearing on is the Higher Learning Podcast, which is hosted by Van Lathan and Rachel Lindsay. And for whatever reason, my eyes were fixated on Lindsay because her face was so funny as he kept saying interesting. She was just like, you could just see, she's like, oh, this is not going well for Gavin Newsom. By the way, the conversation with Gavin Newsom, I listened to the whole thing. I want to commend them for asking tough questions, because that wasn't the only tough question they asked him, and that's how it's done. I love it. All right, now Representative Ro Khanna was unimpressed with Newsom's comments, writing that this is not interesting.
What the fuck,
It is
dude? You are a cheater.
for the future of our party.
You are
we
a
must
fucking
be
cheater,
for human
dude.
rights, not take PAC and lobbyist money, including AIPAC, and call out the genocide to win the trust of young voters and have America be a moral leader in the world again. Agree, Van Lathan? Now, a few minutes earlier, Lathan had asked Newsom if he was in favor of halting all military assistance to Israel, and let's see how that went.
Are you in favor of halting military assistance to Israel?
I mean, the timing's a curious one. When the precipice of a phase 1 deal that was announced today and a ceasefire.
Even if this is over,
but I get it.
Yeah.
So look,
Ceasefire with
I'm
who,
not prepared
dude?
to say that I would support a blanket
They
exemption
assassinated all their
for military
leadership.
support of Israel.
A ceasefire with who?
That said, I've been very vocal in my opposition to Bibi Netanyahu. Said he doubled down on stupid on Meet the Press like a year ago. I'm sitting here on your behalf, you're a taxpayer, as the only governor in the United States that sent a field hospital to Gaza and got it in through a third-party country, and is disgusted by what's happened in Gaza. As a human being, as a father, see these children, and how this war has been perpetuated by Bibi Netanyahu. I also have deep respect for the right of the state of Israel to exist and defend itself.
Okay, he seems defensive, if you ask me. And look, Lathan did follow up with a pretty good point. So if Newsom hates Netanyahu so much, then why would he want to, why wouldn't he want to stop sending Netanyahu money, military aid? Let's see how he answered that.
I guess the question is, if there's an admission or an understanding that the prime minister of a country is acting in a way that's either irresponsible, callous, or inhumane, why would we continue to support that country?
Well, I think that's the executive's role to leverage that. We do that a lot. I mean, that's part of the game of leverage. But to eliminate support across the board is something, to me, is a bridge too far. Conditioning in a thoughtful way with a flexibility of or a criteria, flexibility with conditions that are changing on an hourly or daily basis or weekly basis as it relates to not just what's happening in Gaza, but what's happening in Lebanon, what's happening in Iran, what's happening in Syria and other parts of the Middle East is where I think you have to be careful. And I just don't think there's a clean way of answering that without the nuance that I think it deserves.
What the fuck just happened?
Well, there you have the
What
governor
just
of
happened,
California
dude?
Competing with Kamala Harris in the word salad Olympics. What was that? What was that? Let me just list off a bunch of
What
other
just
Middle Eastern
happened,
countries and
dude?
talk
Oh
about
my
leverage
god,
and then do the
it's too
little
much. Slot machine,
weird
slot machine,
shoulder
slot
shimmy.
machine.
You
Slot machine,
are
dude.
not
Slot
guided by
machine,
values or
slot
principles.
machine,
It is
dude.
very
Oh my
obvious,
god, slot
Newsom.
machine,
Destroyed the
slot
state of
machine. Shut the
California.
fuck up. Let me out. Let me out, dude. Let me out. So I can't take it. That was total. I can't take this anymore, dude. Can't take this anymore. I sat here and tried to play you. I need a break. I need a break, dude. I need a break. I gotta walk away. Get out of the fucking casino, dude. Get out of the fucking casino. Let's just turn all this shit off. Get out of the fucking casino. Get out. Oh god, that was. Oh my god. Oh my god, dude. Wow. It's okay. It's okay. Just eating my time. Eating my time. It's just time, dude. It's just time. It's your bad. Oh my god. And a fucking cop car right there, and then just oh my, too much slot machine. Get the fuck out of Vegas, Joseph. Get the fuck out of Vegas, dude. Slot machine. It's a fucking slot machine. Get the fuck away from it. Oh my god. Hey, slot machine. It's fucking random number generator, dude. Hey, get the fuck out of here. I gotta play something else. That's it. I gotta play something else, dude. Let's try to finish the story missions, dude. Let's try to finish the story missions. Get the fuck off today. It's ruthless. Ruthless. Oh, like candy from a baby. Yeah, my bad for trying to play you, dude. My bad. I'll just play you right back. Just load when I die. Fuck you too, motherfucker. Fuck, no, dude. Fuck you too. Fuck you too. Unbelievable, dude. Unbelievable, dude. What a waste of fucking time. Just come on. Where's the fuck all this. Fuck this. Fuck this. Fuck this. Come on. Yeah, get back to the airport. Go back. Let's finish the story modes. Get the fuck out of here, dude. This is too much. Fucking gliding across the top of the fucking map. That's fucking too much, dude. Yeah, whatever. Come on, let's get the fuck out of here.
Come on, get out the core.
Come on, dude. Where the fuck is the fucking airport? Where's the fucking airport, dude? Here's the airport. Let's get the fuck out of here. Come on. But don't fit. I guess that's what they would say. Come on, dude. Come on. Come on, you're wasting my fucking time, dude. I don't give a fuck about you. Come on. You're just using it against me, dude. Game just sucks you in to break your heart, dude. That's all it is. Bait and switch. Come on. It just pretends, dude. And then it cheats to break your fucking heart. No, it does, dude. It's just pretending. It's a slot machine, bro. It's just a fucking slot machine. Come on. Yep, come on. Here we go. Just a fucking slot machine. Chill out.
I need your car, homie.
Chill out. I haven't played games in years, dude. Now you know why, dude. It just gets fucking old. It's old. It's fucking old. Totally old.
What you on, fool? You, my man, are fish comida. Ah, man, thanks for that.
Look how he turns. Look how tight he turns. This is what happens, dude. This is what all your kids do. They're just like, fuck it. I do this. Because you lie, dude. You won't play by the rules. You pretend there's rules and then you break them. You don't play by your own rules, dude. So no one gives a fuck about your shit.
How do you do?
You break your own rules, dude.
I think Los Santos has so much potential.
Oh, yeah, baby. Have you ever... Nobody punches CJ.
You are going down, pal.
Oh, you're too kind.
Unbelievable. With that... Unfriggin' believable. Hey, get away! Let me out! You crazy fool!
That's too much, dude.
everything you need to get even.
Women, too. For the female sports enthusiast or self-defense practitioner.
Perfect for killing, pure and simple.
And a t-shirt that says, you're about to get a good look at my other 44s. Ladies, tired of whistling construction workers? Next time, whistle.
Have fun.
A high-velocity rifle that'll splatter.
Works well in a crowded area.
Over the building site.
Take it, hold it, love it.
Whatever the cost. Welcome to Emanation.
There are cultists everywhere, friend.
You come to a gun shop. We hope you get everything you need to feel real manly and
Oh man, the shit you guys do in that race is just fuck, man. It's heartbreaking, dude.
Ciao, baby. That's the it look to have.
Heartbreaking.
hey, baby. Hey, handsome.
Heartbreaking, dude. Heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. Heartbreaking, dude. That was heartbreaking. Ouch. Heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. Uh, Don't fucking try to get first in every race, dipshit. You're trying to be a completionist. Get the fuck out of there. Stop. Stop. You gotta control yourself.
Entitled to the highest office of this land. It's going to run for president in 2028. I get that I am deeply, deeply biased against him as a victim of his leadership here in the state of California. But let me just give him a tip. I don't know if he's even capable of doing this, but let me just give him a tip. Be authentic for once in your life. You're afraid of Israel or you support Israel, but either one, doesn't matter, has led you to supporting Israel and backing it economically, financially, even though we're talking about a country that had an economic surplus in 2021 when we haven't had one since 2001. Now look, as governor of California, his views on Israel don't matter that much, but his views on Israel matter a lot if he is the head of this entire country, if he's the president of the United States. And I will not vote for any politician that takes any money from the Israel lobby. I never thought I would be a single issue voter, but that's my single issue at this point. Because I see our alliance with Israel as an existential threat to the United States. I said it. Take a good hard look at where we were standing economically in the year 2000. Did we have debt in 2000? No. But our debt blew up after 2001, after the 9/11 attacks on our country. That spurred endless wars that we fight allegedly for our own national security, but it turns out, no, not for our own national security. A lot of those wars, including the war in Iraq, our boots on the ground in Libya, our engagement in the proxy war in Syria, where we literally indirectly armed Al-Qaeda terrorists, and now there's an Al-Qaeda terrorist leading the country of Syria as a result. That was all done on behalf of Israel. We paid for that. We're in debt. At least $37 trillion. Who knows what the number is now, considering the big beautiful bill added another $4 trillion in debt for that. We're bailing out Argentina. We're providing more military aid to Ukraine. We're just bleeding money, bleeding. I guess that's America first. So the real question is, does Newsom represent a paradigm shift or not? And I would venture to say that he doesn't. He's super defensive, doesn't give you straight answers. He's pathetic. I can't stand him. Now, we have very little publicly available information about whether or not Newsom takes money from pro-Israel organizations, and that's because he has run in and won in state and local elections. So it's harder to track that money, unfortunately. But we did find an article from 2008 in which Newsom went to an all expenses paid trip to Israel. And we all know what those trips are about. It's all about propaganda on behalf of Israel to get these politicians to support Israel and also to spy on our politicians, as we've learned recently. Newsom was the mayor of San Francisco at the time. The goal of the trip is to create connections between Bay Area and Israeli business leaders. No, thank you. I don't think we need that. Nonetheless, a Newsom spokesperson said this. Many executives, including Richard Bloom, husband of U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein, are going. That is the least surprising thing I've read in my entire life. He will not visit the Palestinian territories during his stay, the mayor's spokesperson said, also unsurprising. And this month, Newsom signed AB 715 into law in the state of California, which is intended to stop anti-Semitism in schools. So, it is unbelievable. So it was supported by JPAC, among many other leading Jewish organizations. Much of the requirements in the law, which takes effect on January 1st, are open to interpretation. Teachers must be factually accurate in lessons and adhere to unspecified standards of professional responsibility while avoiding advocacy, personal opinion, bias, or partisanship. Just want to remind you all that our textbooks were published by a Mossad agent for many decades, Robert Maxwell. He's luckily dead now. But Macmillan, McGraw-Hill, those were the social studies and history books, textbooks that I grew up on.
Now, I know you blind, man, but you gotta see this.
Very clever. So what's the prognosis? Is this just going to be extremely difficult or next to impossible?
Hear me out on this, homie. All right, the cash room is on the bottom level. There's a bunch of rooms and a tunnel under the whole building with access to the casino floors at either end of the complex. All right? Now, security consists of CCTV, a key code access, and in places, a swipe card.
Hey, are you pointing again?
Oh, my bad. Habit.
Don't worry. It's good practice for when we finally get a crew in on this.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, boss, this arrived for
Hey. Damn, man. Now we seen the plan.
Well, then we've got our first recruit. Come on in and shut the door.
Dang it. Excuse me.
All right, cool. This the security card reader that Zero sent over. Now all we need to do is get one of those cards. Luckily, there's always one guaranteed weak link in any security setup: the human heart.
Oh, excuse me. Steer. Dang it. Stoplights everywhere you look. Stoplight there, another stoplight right there. Excuse me. Let's see, hit your cards with them. Surprised there's no stoplight right here.
Another shift over. See you tomorrow.
Yeah. Hey.
And I had no idea that there was a Mossad agent publishing them. That's not an issue, though. The issue is we need to stop anti-Semitism by hindering the speech of students who might want to be critical of the genocidal campaign that Israel has been engaging in. Got it, okay. It also creates an Office of Civil Rights within a state agency, meaning taxpayers are gonna fund this garbage, which will include an anti-Semitism prevention coordinator to consult with school districts and advise lawmakers on preventing anti-Semitism in schools. Newsom has acknowledged that the bill will likely require follow-up legislation since the language is so vague. We have a housing crisis in the state. We have more homeless people in California than all the other states combined. This is what they're spending their time on. The state legislature, along with the leadership, political leadership in California, is beyond embarrassing. Their state is in shambles. I would know, I live here. And you have Newsom and the rest of the Democratic state legislature fiddling around with policies to make Israel happy. It's gross.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.
What kind of species did you find?
It looks like a jellyfish with a cable coming out the back end of it. It was bizarre. These are creatures that live in conditions of 8 tons per square inch. I had robots that went down with me. We called them landers. They didn't move, but they would come down with me and land on the bottom. We found one creature in the Java Trench off of Indonesia. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen underwater. Harsh environment. One of the harshest on the planet, if not the harshest. That's why, I had 90 millimeters of titanium protecting me in my sphere. You're seeing the blackest black that your mind can register. It was actually quite eerie. Remember Nietzsche, be careful when you look into the abyss. It's looking back into you too. Oh, every dive we went on, we typically found a new species, which the scientists later said, well, it'd be surprising if we didn't, because these are isolated parts of the ocean floor that have had tens of millions of years of evolution, and no one has ever been there. So yeah, you're going to find some different species. So why wouldn't you? But that was pretty cool.
What kind of species did you find?
Well, the deeper you go, the smaller they get.
What can I add to my collection of fine things?
The scientists, they love their microbes, and they love doing DNA analysis and all that, but there are small amphipods, they're like miniature shrimp.
I'm sure
they're
you'll
little
squeeze
worms.
in just fine.
They're not something that
Let's
people are
have a
going to go, ooh, ah, like looking at, a lion on the Serengeti.
Perfect.
But from a biological standpoint, they can be quite distinctive and very unique.
Hi, Betty.
These are creatures that live in conditions
I'm just
of
trying it on.
8
You got
tons per
yours?
square inch
Cool.
on every
I'll
surface
see
of
you
their
at
body.
my house
That's
in a short
that's
while.
like 4 automobiles on your fingertip. That's where they live, in freezing cold water, and they never see sunlight. We saw colonies of bacteria on the bottom of the bottom of the ocean on the rocks that never see sunlight, and yet they're alive. Well, how can that be? There's something called chemosynthesis, where these are colonies of life that are drawing energy from methane seeping from the rocks, living off the chemical reactions in the minerals of the rocks. This is a different form of life than what we have on the surface of the Earth. In fact, if we find life outside of Earth in our solar system on Ganymede or Europa or these other moons that may have life, it'll probably look more similar to what we saw in the deep ocean trenches than what we see in the, brilliantly
Wow, this is
shallow
the
waters
carrot
of
on the
ocean or
stick
on land.
mission.
So
Quest
scientists have been really excited about that.
World of Warcraft,
Now,
huh?
how does
It's right in my face, maybe? I don't know.
How do these organisms or these undiscovered species, how are they able to withhold 8 tons per, did you say 8 tons per square
8 tons per square inch. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, it's an incredibly harsh environment. One of the harshest on the planet, if not the harshest. That's why, I had 90 millimeters of titanium protecting me in my sphere. And they are designed that way. It's evolution. And I'm sure the one time in their life they ever saw light was when my submarine came to visit them. I'm sure they would look at me and going, how does that thing survive? What an odd alien that is. It's all a frame of reference.
Have they done any, did you collect specimens?
Yeah, absolutely. I had robots that went down with me. We called them landers. They didn't move, but they would come down with me and land on the bottom. I had 3 of them. They would act as navigation beacons for me as the submersible pilot, so I'd kind of know where I am. But they could also take film for long periods of time, and they studied everything that came up to feed on the dead fish that we put out for them. And we also had traps where the animals that could move, you know, like a mousetrap, we would have them come into these cylinders and we would capture them and then bring them all the way up. It was tricky because these creatures, as they get less and less pressure on their bodies, they start to disintegrate, kind of melt. So one of the procedures that we had to do was, as soon as the landers came up onto the surface, it was a very rapid action drill to get the samples off the landers and into a freezer to freeze them so we could see what they mostly look like in their ambient environment. But then we could compare what we brought up to the film, and we could see what they basically have. But really the key is getting their DNA and looking at their DNA. I mean, for example, the scientists were fascinated to see, is the DNA from all these different trenches all over the world, is it the same or is it different? Because there are significant implications to both scenarios, and we didn't know until we went and actually did it. And it turns out a lot of it is different. But remarkably, there are trenches that are separated by thousands and thousands of miles that are basically the same creature. And yet, how were these trenches ever connected? How did they migrate? It's a mystery. We don't know. We found one creature in the Java Trench off of Indonesia. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen underwater. It was about at 6,000 meters. And just recently, they saw something that looked exactly like it under Antarctica.
No kidding. What did it look like?
It looks like a jellyfish with a cable coming out the back end of it. It was bizarre. It's called the stalked Decidian. More or less looks like a jellyfish, but it didn't move like a jellyfish. It looked like a balloon, sort of, but it was moving, and it came right up to the lander, did a right turn, and crossed it. And it was just bizarre.
Do you see any, like, bioluminescence?
Oh, yeah, we saw bioluminescence all the time. In fact, it's the most common form of communication on planet.
What do you mean by that?
There are more organisms in the ocean than on land. And the primary form of communication for animals in the sea is light.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
It's not whales talking to each other with sonar, although they do that. But most life are small creatures, and they're bioluminescent. So at about 2,000 to 3,000 meters, when you start getting really dark, but before you get into ultimate dark, below 6,000 meters, there's no photons. There's like no light. It's not possible to see light below 6,000 meters because all the photons are absorbed. No, we bring lights with us on the submarine, but if you turn all the lights off on the submarine and you look out of the portal, you're seeing the blackest black that your mind can register. It's actually quite eerie.
Spit it out, filthy worm.
Remember Nietzsche, be careful when you look into the abyss. It's looking back into you, too. But for bioluminescence, at about 2,000 or 3,000 meters, I would turn all the lights off. And then I would turn all of them on at once, and then turn them off again, like I was blinking. And sure enough, not all the time, but often, I'd start seeing flashes of light all throughout the ocean, like lightning away from the submarine, like they're talking back. It was like I was screaming in the ocean, "Hey!" And they're all going, "What?" And I have no idea what we were saying to each other.
Wow.
But it was pretty special.
Wow. That's incredible. I mean,
it's a whole different world.
Did I hear something about are there any, do they have a skeletal structure? Any of these?
Below a certain level, they can't. I can't remember the exact depth, but we found the deepest fish ever recorded in one of the Japanese trenches in 2022. Our expedition did with the Japanese, who were great to work with, by the way. I can't exactly recall the exact depth of that fish, but it was predicted because after a certain pressure, vertebra can't form. And without a vertebra, you can't have a fish.
Start the season with Etsy and make your holiday traditions extra special. On Etsy, you'll discover original pieces from small shops that will help you celebrate your way. Shop Etsy for holiday decor that makes you feel seen. Special starts on Etsy.
What did that fish look like?
It's very gelatinous. It's one of my favorite fishes because it kind of has an embedded grin on it. It just looks that way. And it just does its thing. It swims at the bottom of the ocean and it feeds off whatever drops from above. And it's kind of ghostly white, kind of translucent. It looks like a pretty simple, happy fish.
What was the specific motivation for going to these depths in these different parts of the ocean? Was it because nobody had been there ever? What's that like to be?
Well, it was a combination. No one had ever been there. And there's deep explorer gene, I guess. You want to go someplace no one else has ever been before. But also the technical challenge. Only twice before our expedition had anyone ever been to the bottom of the ocean. In 1960, with Captain Don Walsh of the U.S. Navy and Jacques Picard, the Swiss engineer. They went down together in 1960, and they never did it again. James Cameron, the film director, he went down in his submersible deep sea challenge. Somebody's gonna be mad at you for screwing up their ride. First solo dive to the bottom of the ocean. Great respect to him, but he never did in that trip. And then we came along, and we did 5 dives to the bottom of the Mariana Trench.
Oh, look here, gun!
And then we did the rest of the oceans, and then we went back, and more than 20 people have been to the bottom of the ocean in the vessel that we built. And Triton submarines who designed and built it were extraordinary. And so we built a tool that allowed for the first time to go anywhere on the seafloor repeatedly and safely that had not existed before.
No matter where you're watching Sean Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.
Cool.
Damn it, Beavis, you almost got me killed with this crap. Now cut it out.
Damn it, Beavis, you almost got me killed with this crap. Now cut it out.
Whoa.
Okay, Beavis. Hey, Todd.
Hey, Todd.
Hey, what the hell do you little turds want?
Beavis wants your chick.
Beavis wants your chick. That'd be cool.
I think you want to get your kick. Hey, just wait here a second. This won't take long.
Yeah, just wait here a second. This won't take long.
Just wait here a second. This won't take long.
Man, don't you ever interrupt me again when I'm getting it on, or you both will die. I think you need to apologize for your rude interruption.
Sorry.
Sorry.
That sucked.
That sucked.
Something's wrong with you, Beavis.
Yeah. Oh, something's wrong with you.
Todd thought you really wanted his chick. So that was cool.
Yeah. Todd thought I really wanted his chick. That was cool.
Damn it, Beavis, I'm gonna start copying you.
No way! You can't copy me, because I'm copying you.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, wait a minute. No, you can't.
Jesus, dude, this is
Oh, yeah. No, you can't.
horrible to try to. This one's in an apartment. Garage. Oh, no garage, looks like.
And this book is basically a representation of many of them.
You're just saying
Some idea of.
Every time you come, it's always impressive. It never gets old.
Exactly. And you can see new. But very happy to just represent that.
My father brought me here in 1980 on the way to the military camp.
You recently said something, I think, about healthcare, which we'll talk about later on.
But let's go back to transparency because
Yes.
I don't want to let that go.
Yeah.
Everyone that voted for Trump bans, everyone was like, release the Epstein files.
Right.
This is not even an argument. It's not even debatable. It's not being a traitor to the president to sign my name on a Thomas Massey discharge petition to release the Epstein files. No. I am staying true to what we've always said. There needs to be transparency. But the things that have shocked me this past week, and I was thinking about it this morning, I was like, I've been here in Washington all week, and I've been at my office, I've been in the Capitol. There's two things I couldn't find this week. I couldn't find anywhere the Epstein files, and I also couldn't find the Republican plan to fix the absolutely destroyed health insurance industry that got wiped out in 2015 with Obamacare. Like, those are the two things I can't find. And when Republicans, and I'm criticizing also Congress big time. I'm really grateful to a lot of the things the president is doing, but I'm really upset with the direction Congress is going. But when we are not doing anything to address the cost of living, we aren't doing anything about Blackstone buying up houses where most young people can't find a house and they're having to compete in bidding wars.
Right.
And we're not doing anything about health insurance premiums, then for the love of God, what are we doing?
Right. Why are the Epstein files such, I mean, we can all imagine why they're such a third rail of American politics. Is it because a foreign government or ally of America was blackmailing our politicians? We don't want that out. Is that a crazy thing to suggest? Is that a wild thing to say? Or is that, in your estimation, a very likely possible reason that these things are not coming out?
Well, I can actually, Ty, will you get my purse and hand me my purse?
Do you have the
It's right
Epstein
up
files?
here.
If you have the Epstein files in your purse right now, we are going to get more views than we ever have. I pray she's about to take the Epstein files out of this. If you take the Epstein files out of this purse right now, I'm telling you, we'll get so much YouTube revenue. I'll buy houses for the people that can't afford them.
I'm going to read you a little list that Thomas Massey read.
Okay.
And I can only read it because he's already read it on the House floor.
This is the most heinous crime ever, by the way. It's crimes against children.
Okay, these poor women, by the way.
Yeah.
These poor women.
Right.
Raped. They went in front of the biggest press conference I've ever seen in Washington and stood in front of cameras, shaking, terrified, and talked about being raped when they were 14 years old.
Jesus.
I mean, and there's known hundreds of them, but they think there's an estimated 1,000 of women. And these women are begging. They've done everything they can, everything they know how. They went to the police. They filed lawsuits. They have done everything they can, and they're terrified. There's a group of them. It's not all of them. There's a smaller group of them that really say that it wasn't just him. And they are scared to release the names, and it's understandably so, because when you release big names like that,
They get sued.
absolutely,
Right.
get sued into the ground. Now Thomas Massey read, and we don't have those names yet, okay? Just to be clear, we don't have those names. But we have a description of them.
Okay.
So let's go over this descriptive list.
Yes.
All right? And then people can really understand why these women, and why I myself said, I'm not suicidal.
Right.
But I am afraid of, this has been so suppressed, it has been so covered up, and it makes no sense. But let's just go through a few things. A Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million. A royal prince. A high-profile individual in the music industry. A very prominent banker. A high-profile government official. One high-profile former politician. One owner of a car company in Italy. One rock star, one magician, half a dozen billionaires, including one from Canada. So, and Thomas Massey read that on the House floor, so this is okay to say. It's already been said.
Right.
And we have speech and debate clause, we can talk about this.
Right.
However, when you think about a list like that, those are very powerful people with a lot of influence. And that's just the list of these people. It doesn't include the foreign country governments that Jeffrey Epstein was involved in.
Right.
The circles that he walked in, the business that he was able to do. And this guy didn't seem that impressive to be able to end up in that kind of position.
Right. It feels like there's something incredibly damaging, not only to those, incredibly powerful and wealthy people, but it does feel like there's something in the intelligence world they don't want coming to light.
We were told by the women's attorney, very specifically in our private oversight meeting that the press wasn't in. We were specifically told, they said, you need the CIA files. They said, get the CIA files.
Which are probably destroyed.
Here's what I think. You know what?
I
look at a lot of this stuff.
Not to be negative,
No,
but they've destroyed countless.
Absolutely.
Right.
Tim, and any common American knows that.
Yes.
It's like to really think that there's some super duper secret room that really contains this information still sitting there is really naive. Probably a lot of information on many issues has been destroyed. And this is why maybe we'll never find out. But is it worth trying?
1,000%. And you've become a hero of people, by the way, that have survived sexual assault and rape at the hands of powerful people that couldn't do anything about it. Maybe not necessarily in this case, but people all over the country and the world that are going, you're not seeing a lot of people that are champion for them.
See, that's the message I think. I think that's the message that we're sending to some teenage girl or teenage boy. I mean, kids. People trapped in a situation that they think they can't get out of. Someone that was maybe kidnapped when they were younger and they're being held in a human trafficking situation. If we don't, at the top level of our government, push for transparency against the most well-known convicted pedophile in history and his network of influence, if we don't push back to release that information, then the message that we're sending these people, and it's very real, is that they have no hope. And I don't ever want anyone like that to think they have no hope.
Reportedly, Trump is talking to the DOJ about, and this could be a headline that I misunderstood, about potentially pardons for Ghislaine Maxwell and Diddy. Is that a joke? I mean, this is in the news.
I know. I hope it's a joke.
Yeah.
George Santos has been in solitary confinement.
And you wrote him a letter trying to get him out.
Of course. When you have George Santos sitting in solitary confinement, but there's consideration given to P. Diddy and Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah, it seems odd.
That's I'm sorry. We can't do that.
Yeah.
And I'll say on top of this, I think the prison system is a terribly flawed system. I think it needs an overhaul all the way around. I'm not for just releasing criminals. I'm not saying that. But I think we could do better in that system. Especially, just given the fact that I know what happened to George Santos and I know what happened to so many people arrested on January 6th.
Right.
And I know their circumstances. We could do a lot better job in that area. But I just have to say that It's not going against the president because the women have already said that he did nothing wrong.
Come back here, maggot.
It's about transparency. It's
Yeah.
about releasing what you have.
Yep.
And it's about treating the American people like adults.
Yeah.
Who can handle the reality that a lot of people in this country that are very prominent have done horrible things.
Right.
Yeah.
And we can, Democrats deserve their criticism. They could have done this in the past 4 years.
Well, I
They
think
didn't do it.
it's kind of mutually assured destruction, right?
Yes.
I don't think anyone believes this is like a partisan problem. You know?
Civilization has ended before, and chances are it'll happen again.
There's a lot of conspiracy theories about the airport here.
You want to go see the tunnels? Let's go see the tunnels.
There is a vast underground network of New World Order command bunkers.
CIA is also home to the truly terrifying murals of Leo Tanguma.
The airport dedication plaque has the Freemason symbol on it, signed by the New World Airport Authority, which technically doesn't exist.
Yo, what's good? We're back with another one.
It's showtime.
I'm at the Denver International Airport where there's tons of conspiracy theories surrounding this place. Let's just get down to the bottom of this. The following are facts. Construction of the airport fell 16 months behind schedule and went $2 billion over budget with a final cost of $4.8 billion. Here are some of the theories. In the Denver airport, there is supposedly an underground facility meant to act as an emergency bunker for the global elite, made up of billionaires, world leaders, politicians, and celebrities. Another theory suggests that there is a vast underground network of New World Order command bunkers. And another theory suggests that there is a FEMA concentration camp for future use.
There's a lot of conspiracy theories about the airport here when they were first building it, especially in the bottom part, the lower part of it, the airport here, where the baggage comes in. Yeah.
An airport construction worker claimed that the scheduled delay had been because 5 multi-storied buildings had been built beneath the airport. The same construction worker, along with others, reportedly said that there was a complex network of tunnels beneath the airport.
This sounds crazy.
You ain't seen Lucifer yet, bro.
When you enter the Denver airport, there's a horse statue officially titled Mustang, but nicknamed Lucifer, and is thought to be cursed. One conspiracy about the horse statue is that it represents the 4th horseman of the apocalypse, which represents death, spoken about in the biblical book of Revelations. Its eyes glow red, a weird fiery red in the middle of the night. The horse statue actually fell on its sculptor, killing him by severing one of his arteries.
Fucking hell. Surprised they still displayed it.
They're all Satanists, bro.
This is Mustang, or more popularly known as Lucifer, the blue Mustang horse statue that stands outside of the Denver airport. It stands at 32 feet tall and is made of fiberglass and has LED lights for eyes. The statue was constructed by a man named Luis Jimenez. One day while constructing the statue, part of it fell off and actually landed on Jimenez's body, severing an artery in his leg and causing him to bleed to death. His choice for using the red eyes was inspired by one night when Jimenez was in his living room by himself in the dark when he saw these electric red eyes staring back at him. Unsure of what it was, he went to inspect further, and it turns out the family's horse was in the living room and somehow had escaped from the family's barn. As if this wasn't creepy enough, when he was talking about the construction of Lucifer, Jimenez literally said that this work is going to kill me. He was simply referring to the structural difficulty of such a large fiberglass statue, but little did he know that this would be the demise of his life here.
That's not really what you want to see when you pull it into the airport.
People tried to get it removed, right?
So with all of the controversy stirring outside of the Denver airport with the blue Mustang, members of the Denver community actually petitioned to have it removed. Protests continued so much so that the statue was even vandalized in 2019. The idea of the curse of Lucifer goes back to the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Lucifer representing the final horse, the archetype of death. Even after Jimenez's death in 2006, it still took an additional 2 years to finish the project. So in total, it took 13 years for Lucifer's completion from 1993 to 2008. So what do you think? Is Lucifer haunted?
No, it's just a weird statue.
Trust me, bro. It's to mark the end of the world.
There are many people who believe the International Airport in Denver, Colorado might be a key location when the end of the world comes. And those rumors have been going around since before the airport was even built. It was in the late 1980s. So at that point, Denver already had an airport called the Stapleton International. But don't let the name fool you. Although it was an international airport, Stapleton was very small. There were too many people who needed to pass into, out of, and through Denver for Stapleton to handle, and so then Denver actually needed something bigger to accommodate all that traffic. As you know, Denver is a big city. It's going to eventually become a big hub. And when the new airport was first proposed, the city wanted to build it in an empty, open field well outside of town. Like, you are going to be going to nowhere to get to this airport. And this was a very odd location for such a huge hub. It was actually roughly 25 miles outside of downtown Denver. So like, you would fly into Denver, this huge city, and then you're gonna have to drive 30 minutes to an hour to even get to your hotel or wherever it was you were initially going to be into Denver. And so this just didn't seem practical. And it made some people wonder, why build the airport there of all places? It just made more sense to put a major travel hub in or near the city. And I mean, there was room to do this. It's not like Denver didn't have room to build the airport closer. They just chose this random location. And it makes more sense, right? Unless there was something special about the airport that made it so it couldn't be so close to Denver.
Come on, Ted. Gatwick and Heathrow are both 30 minutes outside the city. It's normal.
They could have put it closer, bro, but they connected it to NORAD.
So there's already an existing airport in downtown Denver.
Yeah.
They decided to move it to literally the middle of nowhere, outside of the city, and build it way bigger, even though the Denver airport was the 20th most busy airport in the U.S. So not even like that.
Yeah.
But it's like it's now like, I think, the largest airport in the country, or the second largest.
Really?
Crazy, right? So it's on 53 square miles of land.
Wow.
There's one road in, one road out.
Weird.
Building the Denver airport, they moved 110 million cubic yards of earth. So like they dug up 110 million cubic yards. That's equivalent to a third of what it took to make the Panama Canal.
Oh my gosh.
And that amount of dirt moved is, you could build a tunnel that goes straight to the Cheyenne Mountain Complex. Which, do you know what the Cheyenne Mountain Complex is?
Yeah, but for the viewers, maybe you should tell them.
It is a bunker used in case of nuclear war as a command center for the U.S. military.
Okay.
So this amount of dirt, earth being moved is not like normal for an airport?
No.
Okay.
Told you, bro. It's not normal.
Yeah, that is a shitload of dirt to move.
During the Cold War, the U.S. government literally hollowed out a mountain. This is true. This is not a tinfoil tale. They dug out a mountain, and they wanted a headquarters that was deep underground under all of these layers of stone and granite, where they could run military operations in the event of a nuclear war. So all of that stone would reportedly help shield the complex from radiation, EMPs, just any kind of attack. So in the 1950s and 60s, literally the United States of America dug out this massive complex inside of a mountain in Denver. And to this day, it's the headquarters for a local branch of the North American Aerospace Defense Command, otherwise known as NORAD. Which is just crazy, right? But some people are like, maybe they didn't stop at hollowing out that mountain. Some people believe that there is a 90-mile-long tunnel that runs all the way from the Denver International Airport to the Cheyenne Mountain Complex. And this is so if a bomb were dropped on Denver, all of the officials in the city wouldn't have to fight traffic or risk getting picked off while they were driving down public roads. Instead, all of the important people could just get to the airport, get underground, and then go to the complex where it's safe from attacks.
I don't know, man. If they had all that going on under the airport, someone would have come forward by now.
Someone did, bro, but they took him out.
The airport, there's actually known 4 levels below the airport. But
nobody goes
This
there.
one dude came out and who was supposedly, or he was an engineer that helped work on different military bases of building bunkers and all that stuff. He came out and said, no, there's over 6 levels below. So,
and if there's 6 known levels to the human, there's probably like 13,000, right?
Well, no, it was 4 known, and he's saying, no, there's more than that.
Yeah, so now we know there's 6. There's at least double that.
But he went off on all this stuff. Was like, you have no idea what they're using this for, blah, 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 blah. And then he came out multiple times and he's like, I feel like someone's tracking me.
Ooh.
And he's like, if something happens to me, I didn't take my own life.
Oh, dead.
Yeah.
Guess where he was when he died mysteriously?
Denver Airport?
Denver.
Oh.
He was giving a speech in Denver about the Denver airport.
Golly.
Yep.
I don't mean there's a 90-mile tunnel under there.
Trust me, bro. It's to get the elite out of the city.
So in 2011, do you guys remember that comet is like Eileen or something?
Yeah.
Eileen?
Can't wait.
Eileen? This comet was 4 miles wide, right? Which is, in theory, the same size comet, maybe a little smaller, that potentially wiped out the dinosaurs and whatever. But it was heading towards Earth, and NASA was like, it's going to miss us. But I guess there was a brief moment where they were like, it's definitely going to hit us.
Wow.
And President Obama and his staff and stuff they're quickly rushed to, they're in the area or something. Instead of going to the Cheyenne Mountain bunker, guess where they went?
Airport.
Denver Airport.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's the airport. We would have had Air Force One parked up there.
Nah, bro. They were going in the tunnels.
Civilization has ended before, and chances are, it'll happen again. Where do the most important people go to survive the fallout? Well, if you're in the US, chances are you're going to the Denver airport. When the Denver International Airport opened in 1995, it was already 16 months behind schedule, and it was $2 billion over budget. So where'd that $2 billion go, and what happened in that extra 16 months? Let's find out. The Denver International Airport sits on a 53 square mile complex. Just to put that into perspective, that's double the size of Manhattan. And some of the airport runways are over 3 miles long. That's overkill for commercial aircraft, but not for military aircrafts. The Denver airport is thought to go 6 levels underground, but construction workers claim that there are 8 levels, not 6. Over 5,000 miles of fiber optic cables were installed. That's enough to run from one coast of the United States to the other, and back again. Within the Denver airport complex, 5 mysterious structures were erected and then quickly covered up. They range from 7 to 15 stories high, and the official report is that they were built in the wrong place. Well then, why build a 40-foot wide tunnel that connects these buildings to the rest of the complex? Aside from all of this, there are other signs that there's something mysterious going on in the Denver International Airport. The airport dedication plaque has the Freemason symbol on it. It was signed by the New World Airport Authority, which technically doesn't exist.
That's a bit weird.
It's the New World Order, bro. There's an Illuminati base down there.
This capsule supposedly contained items like a ball from the Colorado Rockies' first game that year, a viewer's guide to Beavis and Butthead, a flight book from Denver's previous airport, newspapers published on DIA's opening day, and a Colorado flag. But what really caught the attention of keen eyes was an inscription on the dedication capstone displayed at DIA's Great Hall near the South Security Checkpoint, whose opening line states, "The time capsule beneath this stone contains messages and memorabilia to the people of Colorado in 2094. People expected that the main contributors to building the airport would have been the city of Denver or the state of Colorado. However, the very first name listed as a contributor is an organization called New World Airport Commission. This was odd because research showed that they didn't exist at all. Plus, it uncannily sounded like the New World Order, often referred to as a clandestine, totalitarian world government made up of the world's elite that will ultimately rule humanity in the end. Also etched on that capstone are the square and compass symbol of the Freemasonry that's linked to the Illuminati, and they're said to be composed of various organizations alleged to conspire to control world affairs. Adding fuel to that fire was the date of the airport's dedication, March 19th, 1994. The sum of each digit of the day and year, 191994, is 33, which just so happens to be the highest level that represents perfection in Freemasonry. So, all this has fanned the rumors that DIA is the headquarters of the world's most powerful and influential, who are said to survive Judgment Day.
The Freemasons logo is a bit odd, but the date adding up to 33 is a bit of a stretch.
You haven't seen the artwork yet, bro?
This is where it gets even crazier. In the baggage area, they have these statues of gargoyles coming out of suitcases.
Coming out of suitcases.
Coming out of suitcases. Okay. And then they used to have these murals put up, but they have since taken it down because it got just way too much like, what the heck am I looking at?
Really?
So it was this artist who did these 4 giant murals. I'm just going to describe some of the things that were in these murals.
Oh, no.
Huge. They're really big. So you had, this is terrible.
Okay.
I'm not.
Warning. This is weird stuff.
This
is stuff that was in the airport.
This was in the airport.
Kids would have seen this.
Yes. Everyone would have seen this.
Got it. Okay.
Huge on display. Children in coffins.
Oh my gosh.
A forest and a city on fire. A child holding a Mayan tablet depicting the end of the world.
Nice.
What?
A Nazi wearing a gas mask.
What?
Holding a sword that was stabbing a dove.
Okay.
Not tasteful.
Like it was getting rid of peace. That's what some people were saying. There was a mural of the children all over the world who had killed the Nazi, and they're bringing their weapons wrapped in their country's flag to a little German boy.
Why?
Who was at the center of it with a hammer.
What?
Can we just
like a hammer, like a communism?
Yeah, this is so terrible.
Yeah.
But the one with the Nazi, it was showing like people that were like starving, and there was a woman holding her the sea.
Oh my gosh,
That's what I'm saying. Like, why is this in the airport?
You're in Colorado. Draw some mountains, buddy.
Oh
That's what I'm saying. But they've taken it down, right? Okay.
Because we're being too obvious.
Yeah, well, that's what people are saying.
Yeah.
It's like,
lay it on a little thicker that you guys are wackos.
That can't be right.
Trust me, bro. They were fucked up.
Our buddy Lucifer is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to weird art at the Denver airport. DIA is also home to the truly terrifying murals of Leo Tanguma, like this one called Children of the World Dream of Peace. Now I know you're thinking, James, there's a rainbow? There's a multicultural cast of children? What's to fear? Well, that mural's a two-parter, and that part is what the children dream of, a world of peace. This, on the other hand, is the reality. It features this horrifying figure of military power stabbing the Dove of Peace to death as he lays waste to the cities around him, leaving refugees to flee in his wake. Don't worry though, in the children's dream, they had killed him, and now they're beating his sword into a plowshare. But even this peacetime part of the mural has something unsettling about it. I mean, look at this kid in lederhosen wailing on this sword. Does that make you feel safe?
That's fucking weird.
I'm telling you, bro. It's the New World Order.
Here's how a digital storm workstation can accelerate your machine learning projects.
A conspiracy theory about the organization's alleged ties with Nazism was connected to the airport's 6 runways, with lengths ranging from 12,000 to 16,000 feet. The mysterious link there? The swastika. In modern times, Western countries view the swastika as a symbol of racial supremacism and intimidation because of its association with Nazism. And one just has to fly a few thousand feet above DIA to view that its runway and terminals resemble the shape of a swastika. However, a close look at aerial photography of the supposedly swastika-shaped runways reveals an uneven, misshapen, and largely interpretive swastika at best.
Yeah, come on, that's bollocks.
They did have a lot of Nazi shit, right?
Denver International Airport is under some major construction. Normally when an airport's like that, sometimes they'll do cutesy things like harden our dust, but you're gonna fly better in a few months, you know? And they're like kind of like a little wink that try to make you okay with the fact that you're inconvenienced by the construction. Denver, they're leaning into the fact that people are saying that there are satanic and phallic symbols at the airport.
Oh, I love this.
Construction or cover-up.
I love it.
And it has like the eye that's watching the, you know,
What
like
is
from
that
the
called?
Illuminati. Illuminati eye on a construction hat. Are we creating the world's greatest airport or preparing for the end of the world? What are we doing?
Lizard people.
Adding amazing new restaurants and bars, building an Illuminati headquarters, remodeling the lizard people's lair. Learn the truth at denfiles.com.
I love this.
Fuck these chumps. They're taking the piss, bro.
It's kind of funny.
Nah, bro. They're hiding something.
You want to go see the tunnels? Let's go see the tunnels.
See, these tunnels underneath the airport are used to hold secret meetings for aliens and lizard people. Wait, is that a baggage cart?
Yes, that's a baggage cart. It's not so fancy down here, is it? There are more than 1,000 people who work down here in the tunnels.
So what are you saying then? That all of this weird phenomena isn't related to some huge conspiracy?
Yes, that's exactly what I've been saying this entire time.
Huh. So whether you choose to believe or love to debunk, next time you're at Denver International Airport, feel free to explore.
Wait, no! Interview's over! Interview's over!
More than 1,000 people work down there. More people would have come forward by now.
Come on, bro. They only have access to the baggage tunnels.
The mysteries hounding DIA should rest here to a certain extent, except that what the man responsible for the structure itself said is worth hearing. Curtis Fentress, the CEO and principal in charge of design at Fentress Architects, took over the helm in building DIA. He's worked on constructing many airports, so his thoughts equally matter. In his reply, when asked about any underground tunnels or secret bomb shelters in DIA, Fentress actually said, "Well, I can't really speak of it. I'm sworn to secrecy."
Told you, bro.
Now, was this all in jest? Perhaps, but he went on to say, "I understand that they're going to be creating a tour of some of the underground facilities in the future at DIA. When you go to Moscow, you can go down in the area where they were poised to launch a missile strike against America. They have this big underground bomb shelter about 100 feet down underground. Could be similar to that kind of thing with tours to the underground of DIA. So this wasn't a confirmation, but neither was it a denial of the existence of secret tunnels and bunkers in DIA that many have theorized about. And then Fentress implied that there are possibly more answers people have been anticipating to know, but they're well kept in the time capsule. And when will that be retrieved again? Right, 2094.
2094. Probably going to be a robot opening it.
Yeah, bro. Skynet's coming. But we'll have to save that for next time.
Hold up, Ted. We got to do the giveaway.
Leave a comment for a chance to win in our next episode. Let's do this, bro.
Bang! Pick something from our website and we'll send it straight out.
That's terrortedstales.com. Shout out everyone buying the merch, bro.
Our clothing will be back in stock soon. We're switching over to screen printing. It's going to be the same quality fabric, but all new packaging and new prints.
Bumps and posters are still in stock, bro.
And as always, thanks for watching. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one.
The problem is that you have heaven, you have earth, and you have hell. Okay?
Daddy paid my credit card bill.
The heaven is spiritual. It's consciousness. Hell, it's mechanical. It's machines. Okay? We're stuck in between. It's always our choice whether to choose heaven or hell because of free will. Okay? And for most of human history, we have chosen heaven. But eventually, you had people who chose hell. And when you have choose hell, you have access to technology, right? And this technology allows you to conquer and control other people. Okay? But once you control and you conquer and control other people, you have to get them to obey you. If you are enlightened, if you know the truth, you know that none of this matters. We're all gonna die, so why should I listen to you? So, in order for me to control you, I need you to fear death. Okay? I need you to forget God, and I need you to fear death. When you die, dying is the worst thing that can happen to you. Because remember, before people understood, death was just a part of the journey. It was a release. It was an opportunity to reset yourself and come back. Now, death is the worst thing that could ever happen to you. Okay? So how do you forget God? And how do you get people to fear death? You use science, right? And you create theories like the Big Bang, like evolution, like neuroscience, to make people forget the divinity inside you. Right? So that's what science is for. But unfortunately, for these people, that's not enough. Because eventually, we'll all die, right? So the only way around this is by creating a new technology called transhumanism. Okay? You may have heard of transhumanism. Again, don't worry about the concept now. We'll discuss this later on in the semester. But transhumanism is to surpass humanity, which basically means to defeat death. To upload your brain to the internet so you're here forever. Okay? To trap you here forever. And so, now the question then is, why are they doing this? Why are people in power doing this? Okay, so as we've discussed in this class, throughout human history, it's usually secret societies that have the power. Okay? Why? Okay, well, last class we discussed the idea of bureaucracy, right? Mass bureaucracy. And we discussed how in a mass bureaucracy, bureaucrats don't really want to do anything. They're lazy. Well, guess what? If you're part of a secret society, and you're able to coordinate secretly together, you can control the bureaucracy because you're the only people doing stuff. Okay? But then the question, but the problem is bureaucracies do not like secrets, secret societies. So you have to maintain your secrecy. And how do you do that? You do that through transgression. If you guys are doing bad things together, okay? Now you have blackmail on each other. And therefore, you're committed to keeping each other's secrets. If one of you falls down, everyone falls down together, okay? So now you're committed to maintain the secrets. But the problem is this. The problem is, okay, it's conspiracy, but the moment you're found out, they'll come and arrest you. So how do you work together without actually meeting each other? And the answer is religion. Okay? Or the word we use is eschatology. Religion is just a script, an understanding of the world that allows you to coordinate secretly. Okay? Does all this make sense? Okay. So now these secret societies, they are embedded in a mass bureaucracy, and they're manipulating the bureaucracy, and they're working together to commit transgression. They have their own secret religion. Okay? When you combine these three together, what happens is that they're now forced to invert this understanding, inversion. Why? Because they know that they're doing evil in this world. So when they go meet God, God's going to punish them, right? So the way to get around this is, well, I will just worship someone who's superior to God, who is Satan, okay? Okay. So what they're going to do is they're going to invert this, okay? By celebrating Satan, they can now justify all their transgressions, right? As a way to empower Satan. Also, there's a fundamental weakness in the system, okay? So let's go over the three main characteristics of the system. The first is unity. Okay? So this entire system is complete and unified. Second is symmetry. Symmetry or polarity. And what this means is that if there's good, there must be evil. If there's ugliness, there must be beauty. Why? Because you cannot have one without the other, okay? One thing is meaningless without the other. That's why if you have God, you must have Satan, okay? And the third principle is as above, so below. And what this means is that everything is a reflection of each other. So you can never defeat God, but what you can do is corrupt human beings to worship Satan so that Satan becomes everything. Okay? All right. Are you guys following along? Okay? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to invert this world. And how do you invert this world? What you do is, you know that hell is material. And you know that heaven is spiritual, right? What you do is you brainwash people to worship the material world and abandon the spiritual world. You make money, power, technology, science, the greatest things in the world. Okay? You get rid of God. You get rid of religion. You get rid of compassion. You get rid of love. And that's how you control the world. So in other words, what is happening today is a war between heaven and hell. The people in charge, the secret societies, they are interested. They must make hell into heaven and heaven into hell. They must invert the world in order to maintain their power. So first thing to remember is that because of the principle of free will, God and Satan cannot interfere in this world. Okay? Second is we have to remember that there are different secret societies. There are thousands of different secret societies, okay? But the secret societies that are able to use all three principles to accumulate power are the most successful. Okay? So that's why they're promoting Satan. Then the third question then is, why doesn't God do anything about this? Okay? And the answer is because if you think about it, only in time of complete darkness, only when Satan rules can humans fully shine. Right? Does that make sense? So God has trust in us. God has faith in us. God loves us completely. God believes that someone will stand up and do the right thing. And when that person does the right thing, the universe will shine. Okay? Does that make sense? All right? So only in a time of darkness can the light truly shine. And remember, when someone shines that light is reflected in everyone else. So everyone's light shines as well. Okay? So that's the idea here. You can choose to shine if you want, but only if the world becomes really evil and dark and sinful can you have this option. Okay? So what all this is saying is this, okay? In reality, literally everything is just vibrations, all right? How these vibrations work, right? No one knows, but it's all just vibrational. But what we know is we are participants in the universe. So if we all believe God exists, guess what? God exists. We all believe sin exists, sin exists. Okay? That's why this war, it's not over resources. It's over perception. Do you understand? This is a war of perception. If I can get everyone in the world to believe that God is dead and Satan is a true God, I win. Okay? And how do I do that? Well, I can do that by shooting rockets up into space, by putting man on the moon and on Mars. Okay? Why? Because now I've destroyed the concept of heaven. Before, we've understood that the moon, the Mars were beyond us because they are heavenly, they're spiritual. But once I put man on the moon and on Mars and go beyond, I've proven heaven doesn't exist. I've destroyed God. I can also fake an alien invasion and pretend these aliens are Satan, okay? Okay? All science, you don't know this, but all science, it's not about discovering reality, it's about reinventing reality in a way that serves power. That's what science really is. Historically, what's happened is that a charismatic leader has emerged to say that I am God's representative. Okay? Why? Because we believe we're all equal. Right? You're no different than I. What makes you God? Well, the answer is because I'm channeling God. Okay? And historically, so look at the early empires, the early kingdoms. What they can say is that I'm descended from God. God came down, had sex with my mother, and now I'm born. Okay? But that person's not saying, I am God itself, but I am born of God. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So this is the basic framework for what we're working with the rest of the semester. Okay? But understand that what's happening today is a war between heaven and hell. If I can convince you that God is dead and Satan is the true God, if I can convince you that the material world is real, the spiritual world is a lie, if I can convince you that death is the worst thing to happen to you, and you should do all you can to live, then hell has won, okay? But what's important to understand is this system is set up so that hell can never win out. And the reason why is the entire cosmos is interconnected. So if we do evil, if we feel pain, if there's so much suffering in the world, the earth itself rebels, right? Because of vibrational energy. And this leads to things like the Great Flood, which resets the world and lets humanity renew itself. Okay? So there are all these different fail-safe systems in here to make sure that hell can never triumph. And that's why Elon Musk wants us to go to Mars, okay? All right? But understand, if you just use this concept of heaven and hell, even though it's metaphorical, even though God and Satan are just projections of our imagination, they do help us understand the world better. Okay?
This episode is sponsored by OneDream. Make sure to stick around until the end of the episode for some great video recommendations. For those who have grown up reading the traditional or canonical gospel accounts about the life of Jesus, it can be quite jarring to read some of the non-canonical texts that didn't make it into the Bible. They often include stories and teachings that are very different from what became Orthodox Christianity. And perhaps nowhere is this as true as when we read one of the most famous and interesting of all the non-canonical books, the Gospel of Judas. Out of all the amazing archaeological finds in the 20th century when it comes to ancient Christian and Jewish writings, one of the most recent was the discovery and publication of the Gospel of Judas, a text that turns the teachings of mainstream Christianity on its head and represents a very different interpretation of the famous figure of Judas Iscariot. The story of the manuscript is a fascinating one in itself. It only exists currently in a single manuscript written in Coptic. The actual discovery is a bit uncertain, but it is believed that it was discovered sometime in the 1970s in Egypt, similar to the Nag Hammadi texts that were discovered in the 1940s. The dry and arid desert climate of Egypt is very good for preserving old papyrus, which is why we have found so much stuff there. The manuscript that included the Gospel of Judas changed hands a few times after its discovery in the 20th century and was sold on the antiquities market both in Egypt but eventually also in places like Europe and the United States without anyone really realizing its significance. Now, some scholars had been allowed to see the documents, just a few sections from it, and did kind of realize how significant this could possibly be if it was authentic, but it was never allowed. The people who owned this document wanted a lot of money for it that the academic institutions simply couldn't afford, and so for a long time the manuscript just circulated in different hands in the sort of antiquities dealership market without being looked at properly by archaeologists or scholars or people who could preserve the document properly. Among other things, it was kept in a safe deposit box in Long Island in New York for 16 years, which was a disaster for its preservation. Unlike the dry climate of Egypt, Long Island is not that. So sadly, the text was terribly damaged and many parts of it are lost because of this maltreatment. It wasn't until the early 21st century when the text became accessible to scholars for the first time who, after confirming its authenticity, realized what they were actually looking at. So even though the text had technically been discovered decades before, it wasn't until 2006 that the National Geographic published the findings for the first time, along with a translation. The text obviously made quite the splash, not only in the scholarly community but also among the wider public, which is not surprising given how significant its contents are. The content of the Gospel can be truly surprising to those who are used to the stories and teachings from Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. Just like with the Gospel of Thomas, we have known about a Gospel of Judas for a long time. The early proto-Orthodox church father Irenaeus famously wrote a work called Against the Heresies, in which he calls out groups that he sees as heretical, including what we call the so-called Gnostics. And in that discussion, he mentions a Gospel of Judas as one of the texts belonging to this heretical Gnostic group. Quote, "And Judas, the betrayer, they say, had got a thorough knowledge of these things, and he alone, knowing the truth about all the others, accomplished the mystery of the betrayal. Through him all things, both earthly and heavenly, have been dissolved, as they say. And they adduce a composed work to this effect, which they call the Gospel of Judas." Just by reading this, we get an idea of the uniqueness of this text. And many scholars today believe that the current Gospel of Judas that we have is the same that Irenaeus is talking about here. Because when we read the actual text, we find that, at least from one interpretation, it fits rather well into his description. So what is actually in this Gospel then? There is a tendency among people sometimes to call basically all non-canonical Gospels Gnostic Gospels, which is often not very accurate, especially given how contested that term is. In a previous episode, we talked about the Gospel of Thomas, which is often called precisely a Gnostic Gospel, but should actually or probably be seen as belonging to a unique movement of its own in early Christianity, sometimes referred to by scholars as Thomasine Christianity. So to call the Gospel of Thomas a Gnostic Gospel, according to probably the majority of scholars today, is kind of inaccurate because it doesn't really fit into that category of Gnostic teachings. But when it comes to the Gospel of Judas, this is a text that most scholars agree can actually be characterized as a Gnostic text. Now, we should remember that the terms Gnostic and especially Gnosticism are highly contested. Historians disagree if these terms can be used at all to refer to any kind of movement in antiquity, and if so, then who or what should it be applied to? I discussed this topic at length in my dedicated episode on Gnosticism, but we saw there that Irenaeus himself, the church father we mentioned earlier, does refer to a specific group with the term Gnostics, and with the implication that they seem to use this term to refer to themselves. So with this in mind, we can kind of use that term as a designation for a particular school in early Christianity, which is often otherwise known or identified as the Sethians, or the Sethian Gnostics. And when we look at the Gospel of Judas, we can see that it seems to align with the teachings and cosmology of the Sethian Gnostics in particular, and it is indeed often considered among the writings by this group, along with other fascinating texts like the Apocryphon of John, the Reality of the Rulers, and Zostrianos. Just like the name suggests, the Gospel is to some degree centered around the figure of Judas Iscariot and secret conversations between him and Jesus. The text obviously wasn't written by Judas, but it is named as such more so based on its contents. And while the canonical Gospels, and all of mainstream Christianity basically, sees Judas as the great betrayer, right, the person who gives Jesus away to the Roman authorities, which results in his execution, he is of course therefore probably the most hated figure in all of Christianity. But in the Gospel of Judas, a very different view of this figure emerges. One that gives a new perspective on the Passion narrative, as well as a new picture of the apostles and the purpose of Jesus' mission. The Gospel begins with the words, quote, "The secret revelatory discourse that Jesus spoke with Judas Iscariot in the course of a week, 3 days before his passion." We then read a rather striking account when Jesus walks up to his disciples as they are praying and doing rituals of thanksgiving, perhaps even doing the Eucharist, which is weird given the fact that that event hadn't happened yet, but we'll see why this kind of makes sense soon. In any case, he walks up to his disciples as they are performing these rituals and praying, and he simply starts laughing at them. And the disciples, perhaps understandably, are pretty confused, and so they ask Jesus, quote, "Master, why are you laughing at our prayer of thanksgiving? What is it that we have done? This is what is proper." To which Jesus then replies, quote, "I'm not laughing at you. You aren't doing this out of your own will, but because in this way your God will be praised." This is a striking quote, because Jesus says, "your God." Does that mean that the apostles are worshipping some other God from Jesus? Yep. That's exactly right, and this is the first indication that we are dealing with a Gnostic text here. The apostles here, at least the 11 that are not Judas, in a way represent the many church fathers at the time when the gospel was written that represent the sort of proto-orthodoxy, such as Irenaeus, and which, according to the Gnostics, are heretics that worship a false god. If you've seen my episode on the Gnostics, you'll remember that they reject the God of the Old Testament, or Hebrew Bible, as a false and ignorant pseudo-deity called Yaldabaoth, or Saklas, who fashioned the material world along with his lower rulers, or archons. The world is a kind of prison in which the human being is trapped, and Jesus is sent as a savior from the true God, the so-called invisible spirit, to help us reach beyond this material world and go to the true world of the entirety through knowledge, or gnosis in Greek. And to the Gnostics, the ones who composed this gospel, the other Christians, the so-called proto-Orthodox, were leading their followers astray by worshipping the false creator God rather than the true God, thus completely misunderstanding Jesus, who he was and for what he was sent. And the 11 apostles in the Gospel of Judas represent these false doctrine. Indeed, throughout the text, Jesus informs them and us that they are misguided by the false god that they worship, and that none of them understand who Jesus truly is. Except for one. Want to take a guess who it is? That's right, it's Judas Iscariot. The man who, at least according to the canonical gospel accounts, is the great betrayer who was led and misguided by Satan to betray Jesus and have the Son of Man, Son of God, killed. This person, this apostle, this disciple in the Gospel of Judas is the only one who truly knows Jesus' identity and has the most complete knowledge out of all the apostles. When Jesus asked who among them is strong enough to stand before his face, only Judas does so. And while he can't look directly into Jesus' face, instead looking away, he utters the very telling words, quote, "I know who you are and from what place you have come. You have come from the immortal realm of Barbelo, and I am not worthy to pronounce the name of the one who has sent you." This quote tells us a lot. Not only that Judas does truly know Jesus' identity, but also further confirms the Gnostic nature of this text. The so-called immortal realm of Barbelo refers to one of the characteristic features of Gnostic thought, with the Barbelo being the first eon created by God, thus the highest being in the divine realm. And when he says that he is not worthy of pronouncing the name of, quote, "the one who has sent you," he is most likely referring to the invisible spirit, which is the name for the true God, not the false God of the Old Testament, but the true highest God who has sent Jesus to help mankind. The rest of the Gospel recounts conversations between Jesus and his disciples, as well as secret conversations between Jesus and Judas in particular. Jesus continues to tell his disciples that they and their successors are basically villains who will lead the people to false worship. Through a vision that the disciples have, Jesus explains how they are like priests who sacrifice cattle, that is, sacrifice people by condemning them to false beliefs. Quote, "They have planted trees in my name without fruit in a shameful way." Jesus said to them, "You are the ones presenting the offerings at the altar you have seen. That is the God you serve, and you are the 12 men you have seen, that is, in the vision. And the cattle brought in are the offerings that you have seen. They are the multitude you lead astray before that altar." The 11 disciples really have a rough time in this text, but the role of Judas Iscariot is a little more complex. In their secret conversations, Jesus eventually tells Judas about the complex cosmology of the Gnostic system, and many of the famous players are featured here. Quote, Jesus said, "Come that I may teach you about the things that no person will see. For there is a great and infinite realm whose dimensions no angelic generation could see, which is the great invisible spirit, which no eye of angel has seen, no thought of the mind has grasped, nor was it called by a name." He then recounts many of the features that we recognize from other Gnostic texts, such as the secret book of John. But a few things are different in the Gospel of Judas compared to some of those other Gnostic texts. Sophia, or wisdom, does not play as major of a role here. So in the secret book of John, for example, it is Sophia, one of the eons in the divine realm, that creates Yaldabaoth, the sort of pseudo-divinity that creates the world, this ignorant, false god. Sophia wants to create something of her own without asking permission from her male counterpart and asking permission from the invisible spirit, and so she creates a kind of deformed creature, right, which becomes this figure of Yaldabaoth or of Yaldabaoth or Saklas, who then creates the world and the archons. And whereas in other texts the names Yaldabaoth and Saklas are used for the same being, the ignorant creator of the universe, here they are separated. Yaldabaoth is a slightly higher being in the hierarchy, whereas Saklas is an even lower being that is responsible for the creation of the world and thus identified with the God of the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible. But the important part is not the details of this cosmic system, but the redemptive and salvific nature of Jesus. There is a generation of people, the pure generation, perhaps identifiable with the seed of Seth in Gnostic myth, that will be saved through their correct gnosis or knowledge, whereas all other generations of humans are doomed to perish. But unlike the Gospel of Thomas, for example, which, granted, should probably not be seen as a Gnostic gospel to begin with, but there, as we saw in that episode, the crucifixion of Jesus was not really considered. It was not an important aspect of the mission of Jesus or how Jesus saves humankind. In the Gospel of Judas, the crucifixion does seem to play a pretty important role in the salvation of humanity. And what is so fascinating about this text is that Judas plays a very important role here, and in a quite different way from the canonical accounts. Judas discusses with Jesus how he has had visions of his own where the other apostles hate him and treat him very harshly. This is an indication of Judas's important mission. Indeed, because Judas is special and has more perfected knowledge than the other disciples, he has been given a very tragic yet important task. Whereas the other disciples will continue to sacrifice to evil and to the false god, Jesus says to Judas, quote, "But you will exceed all of them, for you will sacrifice the man who bears me." In other words, Judas will help Jesus shed his false material body and accomplish the crucifixion. As you can tell, this is pretty radically different from the mainstream accounts. In the Synoptic Gospels, Judas is the great betrayer, as we have said. There is a similarity in a certain sense in that Judas does accomplish a preordained plan, right? It is the plan from the beginning for Jesus to be crucified. That was what was supposed to happen, and Judas, of course, plays an important role in making that happen. But in those canonical accounts, Judas still does what he does based on greed and being misled by Satan, right? He's unequivocally an evil figure according to those stories. In the Gospel of Judas, it's very different, because here, Jesus explicitly gives him that mission. Jesus tells Judas that this is what you have to do for me to accomplish my mission. So Judas doesn't do this for greed or anything like that, but rather as the greatest sign of loyalty, right? It's turned completely upside down. It really is the greatest sign of loyalty, because what Judas does will inevitably lead to him being cursed for all eternity by most people. And still he does it because he's loyal to his master Jesus, who gives him this mission. It's kind of a tragic story, really. Indeed, the whole gospel concludes with Judas going to the authorities as requested by Jesus, and ends with the lingering and haunting words, quote, "And Judas received some money and handed him over to them." Judas is here a kind of tragic hero, sacrificing himself and his reputation to accomplish Jesus' mission. This has led to many interpretations of Judas' role in this mythology, because it isn't exactly straightforward. For sure, Judas is portrayed as special, as having more knowledge than the other apostles, after all being the only one who knows Jesus' true identity and from where he came, as he said in the quote. But other passages also makes it clear that Judas won't be saved and enter paradise either. There have been many interpretations by scholars. Some of the earliest ones looked at this text and interpreted Judas as a hero. But as more fragments appeared and further study was made, opinions started to change. Some see him as being portrayed entirely negatively in the text, while the majority today see him as a kind of neutral figure. A figure that plays an important role, but is neither heroic nor evil. Indeed, in an early section of the text, Judas says that he has had a vision, to which Jesus just laughs mockingly and says, quote, "O 13th daimon, why are you so excited? Speak your mind then, and I'll hear you out." What does this 13th daimon mean? First of all, we should understand that the term used here, daimon, is a Greek word that does not correspond to our modern idea of demon, which is today always a kind of negative thing according to Christian theology. Instead, here it is a kind of designation for an intermediary figure between gods and men who are neither inherently good or bad. They can be both good or bad. So what he is saying here is that Judas is some kind of spirit, you could say. But things are still very confusing. In a later section, we find out a little more. Quote, "Judas said, 'Master, is it possible that my seed is subject to the rulers?' Jesus answered him and said to him, 'Come, that I may,' something, the text is lost here, 'but you will go through a great deal of grief when you see the kingdom and its entire generation.' When Judas heard these things, he said to him, 'What advantage is there for me, since you have set me apart from that generation?' Jesus answered and said, 'You will be the 13th, and you will be cursed by the other generations, but eventually you will rule over them.'" This is admittedly a very cryptic passage, but we can deduce some idea of what he is saying. Judas is the 13th spirit, or daimon. He has true knowledge of Jesus and will accomplish the mission by handing him over to the authorities, which will of course result in him being cursed by all other people, as Jesus said. But in truth, he will actually rule over them as the 13th spirit, standing above the other 12, thus ruling the created world. After the evil Saklas and his archons have been defeated by the true God, and the divine world of the entirety and the pure generation has gone to that paradisial realm, Judas, as the 13th spirit, will rule the created world as a kind of representative of the divine realm. He will never himself reach that realm himself, but he has the highest position in this lower created universe. There is a lot more detail and a lot more features to be explored in the Gospel of Judas, but just from this very short look into the text, you can already see how much it differs from the traditional canonical accounts about Jesus and Judas and the whole sort of passion narrative, but also how much it aligns particularly with the doctrines and the cosmology of the Gnostics and the Sethian Gnostics, to be precise. In other words, this is a non-canonical text that you can, with good conscience, call a Gnostic gospel. The text has made quite a splash in biblical scholarship, as you can imagine, but at the same time, all of the ideas expressed in the text can also be found in one way or another in other Gnostic texts too, like the Apocryphon of John, or the Reality of the Rulers, and all these other texts that belong to that group. So the ideas themselves aren't that surprising to scholars, but it's still incredibly valuable and fascinating that we have this particular gospel that is probably mentioned by Irenaeus and might have been a pretty important text to the early Gnostics. It turns the gospel stories completely upside down, portraying the apostles as misguided and ignorant, and Judas Iscariot as the most exalted one, even eventually giving him a kind of cosmic role as the so-called 13th daimon. It is yet another example of how many different ways people interpreted the life and teachings of Jesus in the early centuries. It's really fascinating how a preacher from Nazareth managed to create such a significant movement, which eventually turned into the largest religion in the world. Studying the life of Jesus and his teachings from different perspectives is one of the most interesting things in the world to me, and now you can do so through today's sponsor, Wandrium. Wandrium is an online learning platform that brings you a vast library of educational and engaging content through a bunch of different forms: short-form videos, long-form courses, tutorials, documentaries, and much more. All the courses are led by experts in their field, and you can really tell that Wandrium values scholarly authenticity. It's really great stuff. It's almost like having a bunch of really good university courses that you can watch from a single place, and basically from any kind of device too. You can watch it on your TV, on your laptop, on your phone. You can even download it as a podcast, just the sound, and listen to it while you're on the go somewhere. We are working with Wandrium once again because it's really kind of the perfect fit for this channel. Learning and studying has, aside from being a great pleasure of mine, has also basically become my job at this point, which is an incredible honor and pleasure in itself. And aside from all the books and articles that I read and research through, it's really great to also have these really cool, engaging and entertaining videos and courses as another source for information and inspiration. Wandrium is always evolving their library of content, and they're adding new stuff all the time. It really is a huge library of so much stuff. So depending on what your interests are, there's most likely something there for you. For example, lately I've been trying to learn how to read Greek, and as part of that learning process, I've been watching a course on Wandrium called Greek 101, which is led by the scholar Dr. Hans Friedrich Müller, which has been really, really helpful. But perhaps of particular interest to those who are watching this episode, Wandrium has just recently released a new 15-part documentary series called Searching for the Historical Jesus, where the historian Jean-Pierre Espot walks in the footsteps of the historical Jesus and tries to give a perspective to his life and ministry. I've seen the show and it's really good. Even though I've been studying religion for so many years at this point, there were still new things that I learned by watching it. I was really mind blown by all the things we know about the environment and context in which Jesus lived, which really gives us an insight into who this person might have been and what his teachings might have been based on. Just knowing the context in which he lived is of course central to understanding the person and his ideas. So if you're interested in a look at the historical Jesus, I highly recommend this new series, which you can find over on Wandrium. And if so, then I'm very happy to report that Wandrium is offering a free trial to the Let's Talk Religion audience. Head over to wandrium.com/Let's Talk Religion or click on the link in the description to start your free trial today. Thank you so much to Wandrium for sponsoring this episode. Thank you to everyone for watching. Thank you to all of my patrons as always, and I will see you next time.
Denver Airport is the strangest place in the entire world. Between its enormous size, bizarre design features, and apocalyptic artwork, there's a pervasive feeling that something just isn't quite right. Whether it's lizard people, the Illuminati, or YouTubers who trap their writers in basements, no comments on that one, just something off about Denver International Airport. But what exactly is it? What strange conspiracy theories does this unconventional air hub hide within its walls and beneath its concrete? And when you start to peel back the curtain, do these conspiracies remain mere theories? Or do they become fact? Well, it's time to dust off the tinfoil hats and take your medication, because we're going hunting for the truth that they don't want you to know.
Business.
So let's fasten our seatbelts while I give you the safety briefing on the background and basics of Denver Airport before we get into why it's so monumentally weird. Denver International Airport, known by both codes DEM and DIA, is located roughly 20 miles or 30 kilometers from downtown Denver in the great and square state of Colorado. It makes sense that Colorado was one of the first US states to legalize recreational marijuana because up here near the Rocky Mountains, we're getting pretty high. Oh, Ollie. I don't know how I feel about that joke. Surfshark are the wonderful people sponsoring today's episode. Have you ever connected to airport Wi-Fi and something like you just ask yourself? It's a VPN and it protects your data when you're traveling or just, honestly, existing. I mean, on the internet, it's not going to protect you in real life. That sort of protection's a lot more expensive. It keeps your info encrypted, hides your location, and even lets you virtually hop countries to unlock shows or snag cheaper prices when booking flights. It works on unlimited devices, phone, tablet, laptop, all covered, and there's no logs, there's no tracking. It's just smoother, safer, better internet. Head to surfshark.com/places or use the code PLACES at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN for free. Back to today's episode. Denver, the city, has an elevation of 1,609 meters or 5,300 feet above sea level. They call Denver the Mile High City for a reason, and we're not even in the air yet. Roughly located in the center of the United States and boasting a variety of natural attractions such as skiing, Denver serves as both a strategic hub for connecting flights across the vast country and a destination in its own right. The state recognized this potential, yet until the 1980s it failed to fully capitalize on it. Air travel was becoming more accessible and affordable than ever, but Denver didn't have an airport capable of handling tens of millions of passengers each year. Instead, it relied on Stapleton Airport. Now, don't get me wrong, Stapleton was serviceable, but its origins stretch back to 1929 when it was known as Denver Municipal Airport. It had grown and expanded over the years, yet by 1980s it faced a fair number of problems. Firstly, it was pretty small, and trends at the time suggested that air travel was only going to become cheaper. Moreover, expanding on the original site would have been challenging. Local communities were beginning to file noise complaints, and there simply wasn't enough room to accommodate new airlines and destinations. All of these factors together placed a hard limit on what an airport in Denver could ultimately achieve. It also had a pair of parallel runways situated too close together for safe landings during bad weather, a condition that occurs quite frequently at this high elevation, roughly 150 days a year. During the 1970s and 80s, several high-profile crashes in adverse weather conditions resulted in many fatalities and injuries. Due to these safety risks, the number of arrivals per hour, which was intended to be around 80, sometimes barely reached 36, another factor that ultimately limited Denver's ability to become a true air travel hub. To circumvent these issues and plan for the future, it was decided that a new airport should be built, with construction beginning in 1989. Although there were naysayers at the time claiming that a new airport simply wasn't needed in Denver, these voices would later help fuel conspiracy theories. And now, if you'll just allow this to become a mega projects video for just 1 second, we need to talk about the grand scale involved in building Denver Airport. The new site for Denver Airport covers approximately 53 square miles or 137 square kilometers. For reference, Disney World spans 39 square kilometers or a little over 101 square miles. Meanwhile, the world's busiest airport, Atlanta, is located on a site that's just over 7 square miles or about 18 square kilometers. So, you might be wondering, well, what's with all the extra land? Today, Denver stands as the second largest airport on the entire planet. It is genuinely enormous, some would argue unnecessarily so. But hold that thought because we're going to be coming back to it later. Over 84 million cubic meters of dirt and rock were removed to flatten the landscape, enough for an airport. This map represents about a third of all the excavation carried out to create the Panama Canal that cuts through a continent. In addition, 2.2 million cubic meters of concrete was laid to construct 6 state-of-the-art runways. 5 of these runways measure 12,000 feet, or 3,657 meters, while one extends 16,000 feet. That's roughly 3 miles, making it the longest commercial airway in North America. It's about 5 kilometers? Good lord. It was even capable of the world's first simultaneous triple landing, thanks to what is considered one of the most sophisticated air traffic control towers in the entire country. As the mid-90s approached, Denver Airport neared completion. It featured an iconic tented roof designed to evoke the nearby Rocky Mountains, and the project was completed in 1995, approximately 16 months behind schedule, and a staggering $2 billion over budget. The total cost came to $4.8 billion, which, when you adjust for inflation, is about $9 billion today. It's quite expensive. But other than the tiny $2 billion sized detail, Denver Airport is everything you could ever want in an air travel hub. It's expansive, with multiple floors that lead prospective passengers toward pricey provisions. There's ample parking and drop-off zones, as well as a metric plane load of stores, lounges, cafes, and restaurants to help you pass the time while you wait for your flight. And of course, it has all the classic airport features: check-in desks, security, 169 different gates, and even a train that shuttles travelers from the main Jefferson terminal to all 3 concourses. It was also better equipped for the weather. The heat and altitude during the summer meant the planes needed longer distances to take off, which is where the extended runways come into play, and the airport snow program is considered by many to be world-class, even if the infamous blizzard of 2003 did rip a hole in the roof. So that's the lowdown on Denver Airport, a totally normal, not at all strange airport, just like any other airport, right? Right? Well, no. When you start looking just a little beneath the surface, however, you begin to notice that this airport is wrapped in a host of odd mysteries, suggesting something far more sinister at work. Something they don't want you to know. So let's dive in, shall we? The conspiracy theories surrounding Denver Airport are as varied as they are numerous, ranging from reptilian overlords to satanic doomsday cults. While 1 or 2 of these peculiar claims might be chalked up to mere coincidence, the overwhelming aura of bizarre energy surrounding the airport has convinced many on the internet that a grand cabal is secretly in control. What exactly is it that makes Denver Airport so strange? Well, to start with, some are absolutely certain that the site of Denver Airport sits on an ancient Native American burial ground, and that this is the reason behind the delays in the construction and the massive budget overspend. Of course it is. We are in Colorado, though, so it's not out of the question. Others contend that, the burial site, not that it caused the delays. Others contend that there has to be a reason to build an airport on a large area like this, and for that much money, that goes beyond mere commercial means. There are many airports with larger capacities that occupy a mere fraction of the area and were built for significantly less. So, what gives? Well, according to those who like to eat lead paint for breakfast, it might have something to do with who started the whole operation in the first place. But wait! You might be thinking, Denver Airport was built by the US government. Well, yes and no. Its construction was a project that involved local, state, and federal government, along with numerous contractors who did the actual work. However, a dive into the archives at the Denver Public Library reveals that during its construction, part of the project was overseen by the, quote, New World Airport Commission. This has led some to assume that the airport was merely a front for the so-called New World Order, a shadowy cabal of elites intent on taking over the planet and molding it in their image. And of course, they would call it after themselves. Right, because that's very secretive. Many believe that such organizations are controlled by Nazis, and that an aerial view of Denver Airport exposes a very familiar pattern in its runways. From what we found, no other airport appears to have runways laid out in this way, which raises a few red flags for those with a more conspiratorial mindset. But alright, if not Nazis, who runs the mysterious New World Order? Well, nobody knows. Some say lizard people, some say the Illuminati, others claim it's Freemasons. And to be fair, that last one might actually have something to it. Back in 1994, just before the Denver airport opened, a time capsule was placed on the site to inform future generations in 2094 about what we were up to at the time. It apparently includes a credit card, a Colorado state flag, a newspaper commemorating the airport's opening day, and various other trinkets and memorabilia. Sounds innocent enough until you notice another little symbol on its headstone, the Freemasons' square and compass, which has long been associated with the Illuminati, secret societies, and all of that fun conspiratorial stuff. And that's not all when it comes to the weirdest things being found at Denver Airport. Or should we say, below Denver Airport. Because some believe the chemicals in drinking water turned frogs gay, this vast site might suddenly make sense to them. Why was it so expensive? Why was it so massive? Well, one theory suggests that massive underground tunnel complexes lie throughout the area. One claim is that in addition to the airport's 6 main runways, there are enormous secret runways buried just below the surface, each extending for 4 to 5 miles. It is said that, quote, when the time comes, whatever that means, these hidden runways will be quickly revealed so that large planes carrying all the satanic global elites can land safely and perhaps, I don't know, have a cup of tea or something like that. Other underground sections of the airport, which we know exist, here are some pictures, are said to be used for other mysterious purposes. Some claim there might be tunnels connecting the airport to the NORAD air defense facility, located just 90 miles away at Peterson Space Force Base. Others have speculated that the complex serves a variety of functions, ranging from a series of bunkers where elites could hide during an apocalypse, to a secret military facility, or even as a black site prison for individuals that the US government apparently wishes to make disappear. One of these claims must be false, though, because even the Illuminati would find it strange for those 3 distinct groups to all be subterranean neighbors. But if you thought that the airport's odd geography was the extent of its quirks, well, think again. Denver Airport is filled with some of the strangest art ever installed on or around a public building. And look, let's start by talking about that cursed blue horse. Just outside the Jefferson Terminal stands a striking blue statue of a horse over 10 meters tall with glowing red eyes. It's perfect if you want your children to take a bit of trauma from vacation. Weighing over 4,000 kilograms, the art installation, named Mustang and created by Luis Jimenez, has been menacingly rearing since 2008. It's made of fiberglass, and beyond its eerie appearance, conspiracy theorists claim it is cursed, earning it the nickname Lucifer. And here's the kicker. Maybe it is cursed, because Jimenez didn't actually finish it himself. Back in 2006, a piece of the sculpture fell onto him, severing an artery in his leg, which wound up proving fatal. The sculpture was later completed by his son. If you ask the locals, Lucifer's eyes didn't even start glowing red until the creator had died, which is spooky and probably not true. It's not even the only creepy sculpture to have been on Denver Airport grounds. Back in around 2010, a 6.7-meter statue of the Egyptian god of death, Anubis, was erected there. It was removed in 2011, yet it remains another omen of death and the apocalypse, courtesy of Denver Airport. Inside the airport, it somehow gets even weirder. This is an airport, remember, not an eclectic billionaire's art collection or a haunted manor. It's the place where you get ripped off for a bagel and a coffee. You tend to do pretty normal stuff at an airport. You eat something, you sit around, you walk around, and maybe you look at some of the art on display. But if you do that in Denver, you'll find yourself wondering what you're looking at. Denver Airport features a series of murals painted by artist Leo Tanguma. One of these depicts a dark scene. A soldier in a gas mask equipped with a rifle is shown stabbing a white dove, a symbol of world peace, with a sword. The soldier appears to be rampaging through a dilapidated city as a grieving mother holds what seems to be a deceased infant. Other children are shown sleeping just beyond the soldier's reach. Another mural appears to show a forest ablaze with dead bodies in coffins, and the dead animals strewn about are encased in glass while children cry. Doesn't exactly scream, "Yay, we're going to the Bahamas," does it? Many choose to believe that these murals allude to the end of the world and serve as proof that the airport is somehow linked to a fascistic secret society. There's also lettering strewn on the floor that seems to make no sense. Perhaps it's a kind of secret Kabbalist language. Additionally, the floor features the chemical symbols for gold and silver, which makes sense. We're in Colorado, even though this might carry a dark undertone. AUAG, as seen here, could be referencing the Australian antigen, an antigen first found in Australian Aboriginals and used to treat hepatitis B. When combined with the soldier in his gas mask, some have concluded that Denver Airport will become the future epicenter of biological warfare the world over, because apparently no stretch is too much for a conspiracy theorist. And finally, there are the gargoyles. Yes, this is an airport with gargoyles, as if pilots hitting birds wasn't bad enough. Notre Denver is the name of the art piece, in which 2 gargoyles watch over the baggage claim area, each perched on a Samsonite suitcase as a wink and a nudge to the old Samsonite factory that operated in Denver until its closure in 2001. There's no conspiracy theory here, it simply contributes to the rather strange energy of the place. So that's it then. According to some, Denver Airport is owned by the New World Order. It's run by sentient aliens looking to harvest our organs through the X-ray machines at security. Oh my. It's haunted by a murderous giant blue horse, and the Illuminati will be running the planet from its underground bases once the apocalypse comes. Right? Well, no. Obviously not, so let's restore some sanity, shall we? You see, almost everything we've mentioned so far in relation to Denver Airport, while 100% true, was missing some key context and details that help explain just why this airport is so strange. This is what conspiracy theories do. They cherry-pick evidence and leave out just enough details to deceive the gullible, and those who long for more control in an uncaring world eat it up. After all, the reality that this Earth is a randomly cruel place is infinitely worse for some than a shadowy organization secretly running things. It's often seen as better to have a malicious hand on the wheel than no hands at all. So let's start by debunking the Denver Airport conspiracy, starting with the questions that send most people down the rabbit hole in the first place. Why is Denver Airport built on such a large site, and why was it completed both late and massively over budget? Well, the latter, because it's a big project, not exactly unique. Let's break it down, though. Denver Airport is a truly massive site, and there's no doubt about that. However, we must remember how we got here in the first place and the context in which Denver was built. Stapleton, the airport Denver had before Lucifer's stable, was too small. There simply wasn't enough space to expand it into the air travel hub the state wanted it to become. If Denver was going to serve as a national nexus for passengers across the United States, it needed to be big. The pioneers of the project knew that it wouldn't be enough for the airport to be big merely for the year 1995. It needed to remain functional and spacious for 30, 40, or even 50 years after it was completed. To ensure this, they planned ahead and secured additional land for future expansion, something Stapleton could not offer. Future-proofing isn't a conspiracy, that's just smart planning. And sorry to disappoint you, it wasn't built on an ancient Indian burial ground as far as we know. No native tribes have said anything about the airport falling on spiritually significant ancestral lands in the 30 years since it opened, and you've got to assume something would have been said if that was a concern. Archaeological evidence found during excavation indicated it could have been an old hunting ground, though, so maybe that's something, but probably not. As for it being late and expensive, if you've seen any infrastructure project in the last half-century that wasn't a little late and a lot over budget, well, you haven't been following along. This observation helps explain what's happening with those underground areas. When the project was first being built, several buildings on the site either weren't constructed to the right specifications or perhaps weren't in the right place. Instead of demolishing them and starting anew, they were buried and built over, which accounts for some of the underground space. Keep in mind that there was already an underground train connecting the concourses, and they had plenty of spare dirt lying around. Furthermore, underground there once existed an enormous baggage handling network that was supposed to be fully automatic, which makes sense when considering the motivations of those who built the airport. They wanted it to be for mass passenger air travel. But the thing is, it never really worked, and by 2005 it was mostly abandoned. In some images you can still see remnants of this infrastructure in underground sections that may once have carried the bags on high-up conveyors. It was eventually replaced with a more traditional baggage handling system. A very expensive mistake. Parts of the system also help explain both the construction delays and the metal workers' strike that occurred in the middle of the project. So it's not an end-of-the-world bunker. I mean, it could have been once, or perhaps it was thought of as an emergency site underground of some kind. However, that's just speculation, and we already know that underground doomsday bunkers for politicians and elites exist throughout the world. They tend to be built dozens of meters underneath mountains, where no people can go, not underneath the busiest airport on the planet that surely anybody can just drive up to. Sure, it's close to NORAD, and being in the center of the country, it's well defended, but the longest tunnel in the world is in Norway. It's 15 miles or 24 kilometers long, a full 6 times shorter than the Denver Airport NORAD tunnel would have to be. I'm not saying it couldn't be done, especially for the United States, but it's just not very likely. Much of the conspiracy talk surrounding Denver Airport stems from conflating the New World Order with the New World Airport Commission. Yes, The names are similar, but the same archives that revealed the organization's name also detail its activities. In reality, it was merely a short-lived campaign designed to generate publicity for the airport's construction. Founded in 1986 and dissolved in 1998, its lifespan conveniently coincided with the airport's building period, as if that were its sole purpose. Weird. Its founder, Charles Ansbacher, was a Colorado Springs symphony conductor, and the name was chosen to honor Dvorak's New World Symphony. Considering that the Americas are often referred to as the New World, it's not hard to understand why an airport commissioned in the United States might adopt such a name if the intention was always for the airport to become one of the most important in the New World. You'd also think that the New World Order, if it did exist, would want to be a bit more subtle about their secret Nazi lizard base under Denver Airport. The same can be said for the unfortunate layout of the runways, which some claim forms a swastika shape. Denver is at a high altitude and frequently experiences strong winds from every direction. Logically, if you want to keep the airport functioning, you need to have the runways pointing in various directions. However, any resemblance to a swastika seems like a bit of a stretch. It's hard to imagine a secret society planning everything out only for the design to turn out lopsided and awkward. The inconsistency suggests that the pattern is unintentional. Accidents happen. For example, consider the layout of the Coronado Navy base in California. The difference between that design and Denver's runways is like night and day. Furthermore, the sectional charts and plans for the airport help clear up the confusion. While the airport's shape bears sort of a resemblance to the symbol, any similarity appears to be an unfortunate coincidence, stemming from the human tendency to recognize patterns. We're real good at that. After all, the secret Nazi cabal would likely prefer a symbol less obvious than a swastika. Right there. Super visible. So what about the Freemason symbol? I mean, it's right there on the time capsule, and yeah, it is. Because they created it. I mean, what do you think a Mason is? They carved the stone lid for the capsule and funded its creation in lockstep with both local philanthropic Freemason lodges in Colorado, as well as a common Masonic tradition to include their emblem as part of a public ceremony. There are no secret societies here, and if there were, they wouldn't be putting their branding on things. Alright, but what about the weird art? There's definitely something intriguing about it. After all, the horse did kill someone. Fortunately for skeptics among you, there is an explanation. According to Colorado Public Radio, the artist Jimenez woke up one night to investigate a noise coming from downstairs and was terrified to see a pair of glowing red eyes in his living room. It turned out to be his horse, Blackjack, who'd gotten into the house. I don't know how a horse sneaks into a house, but it ultimately became the inspiration behind the sculpture. Blackjack was also the model Jimenez used for his work, and the blue color was chosen because Blackjack was a blue roan Appaloosa, which tends to have a slightly blue tint. That's cool. I didn't know there were blue horses. The red LED lights that give the sculpture its evil glare are also said to be a homage to Jimenez's own father, who owned a neon sign shop when he was young. As for Anubis, it was part of the advertising campaign for the Denver Art Museum, since the Traveling King Tut exhibition was on display there from June 2010 through January 2011. The piece was later removed when the exhibit left town. Okay, but what about the murals and the other art pieces? They surely display a clear indication of the world ending and of secret societies rubbing their grubby little mitts together behind the scenes. Well, again, not really. The murals painted by Leo Tenguma may exhibit some pretty dark and creepy imagery, but they also reveal a flip side. One piece contrasts the soldier in a gas mask with its counterpart, a shattered statue of that same soldier lying on the ground. This symbolizes a global awakening as peace breaks out in the dreams of children. If that's the New World Order we're talking about, I mean, sign me up. Sounds pretty nice. Similarly, the mural depicting a burning forest and dead animals is paralleled by another image showing people from all walks of life rejoicing in nature, living in harmony with the natural world. Tenguma's works are intentionally crafted to illustrate both the world at its worst and its best, ultimately encouraging world peace and nurturing a healthy relationship with the natural environment. The artist himself has said about the works, quote, "I have children sleeping amid the debris of war, and this warmonger is killing the dove of peace. But the kids are dreaming of something better in the future, and their little dream goes behind the general and continues behind this group of people, and the kids are dreaming that peace will happen someday. See how the little dream becomes something really beautiful, that someday the nations of the world will abandon war and come together." It's quite word salady, mate. That's a story of peace and hope, not one marked by the oppression and fear that the satanic New World Illuminati lizards bring, right? Now, regarding the AUAG symbols, they're clearly a reference to the gold and silver found in the hills that miners have been prospecting for decades. The symbols even appear on a minecart. Forgive the pun, but there is simply no need to dig deeper here. Meanwhile, that so-called secret language, it's not secret at all, it's Navajo. And while the gargoyles might seem odd, they too tie back to the local area through the Samsonite factory. And legend, gargoyles are supposed to watch over everything they can see. It's a slightly unique and tongue-in-cheek way of saying, your bag won't get lost here, we have gargoyles. But there's also plenty of other art throughout Denver Airport that often gets overlooked because the rest of the space is pretty normal in such an unusual place. The reality is, every element of this airport's design isn't a not-so-subtle wink and nudge from a secret society running the world. It's a genuine love letter to the city, the state, and the people who made this place what it is. And that shouldn't be feared. That's pretty beautiful. Even the creepy red-eyed horse. I'm not so sure. Alright, so what's the deal with Denver Airport, really? Is it simply a mix of slightly weird art, some odd design choices, and a few coincidences? Well, basically, yes. There will always be questions about Denver Airport because it stands out too much not to. People have a natural tendency to attribute seemingly random phenomena to something greater. For some, that might be a higher power. For others, it's the conspiracy theories surrounding airports. And Denver Airport has been able to use this to its distinct advantage. Think about it. What are airports all about, really? Tourism. And nothing drives tourism like a good conspiracy theory. It goes even further than that, though. People have ended up flocking from all over the world to come to Denver. But not just Denver, they're coming for the airport, which is pretty wild. The airport's normally part of your vacation that you're just trying to make bearable, the most boring and dull part of the whole trip. In Denver, it's now a tourist attraction, a talking point that everyone who visits via air can relate to. And when you put it that way, it's kind of genius marketing. Denver airport officials have fully embraced the building's quirky reputation by installing maintenance signs that say, apologies for the noise, it takes really big drills to get to the underworld, among other humorous messages.
Down on my last dollar, then I started saving, because the bank said fiscal restraint is what you're craving. So I put my earnings in a high yield account, let the savings compound and the interest mount. I'm optimizing cash flow, put debt in check now. Time is my friend and not a pain in the neck, and we've got a little cash to rebuild the old.
Boring money moves make kind of lame songs, but they sound pretty sweet to your wallet. PNC Bank, brilliantly boring since 1865.
The playful touch shows that they're in on the jokes about secret Illuminati bunkers, underground tunnels, and connections to aliens. Recently, more of these signs have appeared as the Jeppesen terminal undergoes a lengthy remodeling process. The airport's eccentric charm has undoubtedly paid off. Although many initially believed that Denver International would never reach its original design capacity of 50 million passengers per year, it has actually surpassed that goal. In 2024, the airport reached as many as 82 million passengers and is projected to handle 100 million per year by 2035. Fortunately, the original project's visionaries planned ahead with a vast site, giving Denver Airport plenty of room to expand comfortably in the future, a luxury that many other airports will struggle to match or might even need to replace altogether. The current remodeling of the terminal's main hall is set to cost another $2 billion and promises a drastic change that will boost gate capacity by 30% while making the airport safer and more efficient. And that's not all roses. Inspections in 2022 revealed that the roof has numerous problems, especially around the cables that hold it in place. The tinted roof is nearing the end of its apparent shelf life and is reported to need replacing before 2030, but we couldn't find any information on whether that work's begun yet. For now, the airport remains under construction, with all work scheduled to be completed by 2027, actually a year earlier than expected, which helps make up for the original airport's late opening after all. We will see about that. But until then, works like Tanguma's murals will remain in storage. My guess is they're probably kept next to the big red button that says launch the nukes, and maybe the lizard people's heat lamp. And look, we poked a lot of fun at the inherently ridiculous conspiracy theories and the people who believe them in this video. However, it is important to remember that many people take these kinds of rumors very seriously, and for some they can affect their entire lives. I mean, it's fun to talk about Joe Biden being a reptile, but don't let that detract you from the fact that this airport, despite being monumentally weird, is a true testament to modern infrastructure. It's a place that witnessed how the rest of the world did basically everything, yet it simply refused to conform. Yes, there are very real conspiracies out there concerning power and the nature of the world. The best ones are so well hidden that only our grandkids' will ever know what they are. But among all these conspiracies, even though some do eventually turn out to be true, you're not going to find any here. Instead, you'll encounter just a proud people, some weird art, and a big blue horse with glowing red eyes.
11 days ago, I released the video, The Impending Worldwide Anglican Schism, discussing the issues in the Anglican Communion that might lead to a formal division into two separate communions. 400,000 of you watched. Well, it's happened. This morning, Anglicanism broke in half. If you want 15 minutes of information-dense context, go watch that video. But here's a very quick overview. Anglicanism is a worldwide denominational family, and the vast majority has been in one communion. This has gone by the name of the Anglican Communion, and there are 42 member churches or denominations worldwide that belong to it. Each of these provinces is autonomous, but the communion has historically been sustained by what are called instruments of communion. The Anglican Communion website lists them. They are the Archbishop of Canterbury, which office is currently vacant but will be filled by Bishop Sarah Mullally in January next year. The next instrument is the Lambeth Conference, which normally takes place on a 10-year schedule. The last one was in 2022. There is a primates meeting chaired by the Archbishop of Canterbury, last held in 2022. And there is the Anglican Consultative Council, which has archbishops, bishops, priests, deacons, and laity, and meets generally every 3 years. The first sign of a potential future break in the communion was in 2008. Traditionalist provinces that were concerned about the shifting positions on sexuality among some Anglican communion provinces, like the Episcopal Church, held a conference, Global Anglican Future Conference, or GAFCON, in Jerusalem. There they produced their key statement, the Jerusalem Declaration, which includes statements about affirming the creeds, the historic episcopate, but also marriage between one man and one woman and abstinence for those who are not married. GAFCON has grown to be a competitor to the Lambeth Conference. GAFCON also formed a Primates Council and held meetings. This became a competitor to the Primates meeting. And GAFCON has recently announced that they don't recognize the Archbishop of Canterbury as first among equals anymore. GAFCON contains, on most counts, a larger number of laypersons in it than the non-GAFCON Anglican Church bodies. So if these GAFCON-affiliated provinces separated from the others, it really would be a major division. The real step to break communion is if these GAFCON-affiliated provinces would no longer attend Lambeth, no longer participate in the primates meeting, and publicly announce that they are no longer in communion with any of the Anglican provinces that refuse to affirm the Jerusalem Declaration. Well, today, October 16, 2025, that happened. Here's the post on the GAFCON website, written by the chairman of the GAFCON Primates Council, Laurent Mabanda. It's huge. To our dear Anglican brothers and sisters in Christ, grace and peace to you in the name of our risen Lord Jesus Christ on the commemoration of the martyrdom of Hugh Latimer and Nicholas Ridley. The first Global Anglican Future Conference, GAFCON, gathered in 2008 in Jerusalem to prayerfully respond to the abandonment of the Scriptures by some of the most senior leaders of the Anglican Communion and to seek their repentance. In the absence of such repentance, we have been prayerfully advancing towards a future for faithful Anglicans, where the Bible is restored to the heart of the communion. Today, that future has arrived. Our GAFCON primates gathered this hour to fulfill our mandate to reform the Anglican Communion as expressed in the Jerusalem Statement of 2008. We resolved to reorder the Anglican Communion as follows. Number 1. We declare that the Anglican Communion will be reordered with only one foundation of communion, namely the Holy Bible, translated, read, preached, taught, and obeyed in its plain and canonical sense, respectful of the Church's historic and consensual reading, Jerusalem Declaration, Article 2, which reflects Article 6 of the 39 Articles of Religion. We reject the so-called instruments of communion, namely the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Lambeth Conference, the Anglican Consultative Council, ACC, and the Primates Meeting, which have failed to uphold the doctrine and discipline of the Anglican Communion. 3. We cannot continue to have communion with those who advocate the revisionist agenda, which has abandoned the inerrant Word of God as the final authority and overturned Resolution 110 of the 1998 Lambeth Conference. 4. Therefore, GAFCON has reordered the Anglican Communion by restoring its original structure as a fellowship of autonomous provinces, bound together by the formularies of the Reformation, as reflected at the First Lambeth Conference in 1867, and we are now the Global Anglican Communion. Number 5, provinces of the Global Anglican Communion shall not participate in meetings called by the Archbishop of Canterbury, including the ACC, and shall not make any monetary contributions to the ACC, nor receive any monetary contribution from the ACC or its networks. 6, provinces which have yet to do so are encouraged to amend their constitution to remove any reference to being in communion with the See of Canterbury and the Church of England. 7, to be a member of the Global Anglican Communion, a province or a diocese must assent to the Jerusalem Declaration of 2008, the contemporary standard for Anglican identity. 8, we shall form a council of primates of all member provinces to elect a chairman as primus inter pares, first among equals, to preside over the council as it continues to contend for the faith that was once for all delivered to the saints, Jude 3. As I declared in my statement 2 weeks ago, the reset of our beloved communion is now uniquely in the hands of GAFCON, and we are ready to take the lead. Today, GAFCON is leading the Global Anglican Communion. As has been the case from the very beginning, we have not left the Anglican Communion, we are the Anglican Communion. At our upcoming G26 Bishops' Conference in Abuja, Nigeria from 3 to 6 March 2026, we will confer and celebrate the Global Anglican Communion. Please pray that we will lead our communion in prayerful submission to the Holy Spirit as we hear the voice of Jesus in his wondrous scriptures to the glory of God. So here it is. GAFCON provinces will not attend Lambeth, will not participate in anything related to the Archbishop of Canterbury, and will in fact replace her with their own appointed first among equals. They do not claim to be their own new group, but they say that they are the real Anglican Communion. It's official. Anglicanism is now in too. Here's some things to look for in the months ahead. Will any other provinces globally jump ship from the Canterbury Anglican Communion to the GAFCON one? Will any provinces that fail to do so see a large number of churches seek to exit for new or existing GAFCON provinces? Will any serious efforts be made by the Archbishop of Canterbury or other Anglican bodies worldwide to try and bring the communion back together? Will the Archbishop provide any recognition of the claims of the GAFCON churches to be the Anglican Communion, or will the modus operandi be, as it usually is in such cases, to reject their claims and to treat them as schismatic? Today is a day for the history books. We are living through history, and there are still many unknowns and some uncharted waters ahead.
The Gothic immediately summons to mind a distinct set of aesthetic features. Ruined medieval structures, gloomy shadows lurking about, rolling fog on the moors, the distant howl of some nocturnal animal, flickering illumination, and a sense of the past immensely interjecting itself to doom the present. And it was perhaps F.W. Murnau's 1922 masterpiece of German expressionism, Nosferatu, that most enduringly captured the sense of the Gothic on film. So much so that much in the way of horror films as a genre are basically commentaries, extensions, and reimaginings of those shadows reaching out to us, the uncanny valley of Nosferatu's monstrous appearance, or the impending sense of inescapable dread. From Ravenloft to Castlevania, Dracula to Frankenstein, The Cure to Kylan Mikla, the Gothic has flourished as an art genre and as a lifestyle. But the Gothic is a surprisingly recent aesthetic development. It's hardly older than the United States of America in many respects. But let's explore the philosophical foundations of the Gothic and what is often considered its first true expression, the aptly named second edition, The Castle of Otranto, a Gothic story. A tale, however, that's almost considered unreadable by most today. Make sure to subscribe for weekly explorations and topics in esoteric history, and if you'd like to support the work of providing evidence-backed, free, and accessible content like this, I'd hope you consider checking out my Patreon and some of the merch that we have for sale on the channel. If you're new to the study of esotericism and you want to get the lay of the land, make sure to check out my study guide, which is a directed study of the vast and interesting different domains in the study of Western esotericism. And if you're interested in getting your hands on actual historical books on the occult and the mystical, check out my bookstore, Esoterica Rare Books. You can find all those links in the description and in the pinned comment. But now, let's turn to the historical and philosophical foundations of the Gothic and of Goth. I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and welcome to Esoterica, where we explore the arcane in history, philosophy, and religion. Something like tales of horror have very probably existed long before civilization and will probably endure long after civilization's memory, serving probably as communal wisdom about the dangers lurking beyond the hearth and the tribe. But elements we recognize as horror appear as early in civilization as the descent of Inanna or the descent of Ishtar to the underworld. There we find her threatening to unleash hordes of the living dead to feast upon the living if she's not allowed entrance into the kingdom of the dead of Erishkakal and Nergal. Of course, once she's there, she's stripped of all of her finery and hung lifeless on a nail. Egyptian literature also reveals tales of lonely ghosts bereft of the comforts of their tombs in the afterlife, and the Israelite literature contains a chilling account of the Baalat Ov, the necromantrix at Endor summoning the prophet Samuel from the dead, only to provide news of doom for King Saul. All the classical elements of the ghost story appear in a recounting by Pliny the Younger, a classic haunting house story, where the Stoic philosopher Athenodorus is beset by a ghost bound in chains, shaking them in the night. Found to have been unjustly murdered, the victim is eventually given a proper burial by the Stoic philosopher, and the haunting of the Athenian house comes to an end. The European Middle Ages and early modern period were nothing if not a demon-haunted world, abounding in ghosts and demons and trolls and goblins and changelings. And I've actually covered a wide range of these kinds of tales of ghosts and demons and monsters in other episodes, so make sure to check out some of those in the links below. But, despite the persistent myth of a disenchanted modernity isn't by no means disenchanted, that has been thoroughly put to bed, supernatural horror, both real and artistic, continues to fascinate us. But the Gothic represents a very specific, very modern form of horror. The ghosts and demons of the Middle Ages, despite their sometimes frightful appearance, are practically cartoonish. They're almost always brightly colored, vibrantly clear. They're even commonplace. Medieval ghosts also appear just kind of jolly, smiling in a form, despite the fact that they're otherwise skeletal in nature. The Gothic is a distinct shift, a post-Enlightenment delight in the dark, the irrational, the emotional, the ruined, and the mysterious. But to understand the Gothic, especially as it emerges fully formed in literature in the 1764 Castle of Otranto, we have to explore not just the shift in aesthetics, but also a shift in the very philosophy of subjectivity and consciousness itself. While pre-modern philosophies of mind had largely dealt with the structure and functioning of the mind or soul and its various faculties, it would really be John Locke's 1689-1690 an essay concerning human understanding that would dramatically shift philosophy of mind away from pure analyses of structure and function to questions of consciousness, to questions of personality, to questions of personal identity, and moreover to questions of subjectivity, paving the way for the radical, phenomenological, existential, and even cognitive developments of more recent centuries. But it would be Locke for whom consciousness was the necessary and sufficient condition for personal identity, and his analysis hinged on just what consciousness was, and just what consciousness was conscious of. This shift not just toward the subject, but to the nature and moreover the experience of subjectivity itself represented a sea change, a dramatic shift in all the Western philosophy of mind. Now, of course, this shift had already basically happened in literature. This is more to the point of Hegel and the whole Owl of Minerva always appearing too late. The characters of something like Hamlet and Shakespeare being now widely recognized as the first character defined precisely by their subjectivity in all of its proto-existentialist glory and turmoil. But hang on to Shakespeare. Hang on to Shakespeare, he's going to matter way more in the story as we go. But with that Lockean shift towards consciousness, towards subjectivity, there was an explosion of British philosophical interest in the very experience of consciousness, especially as it was indexed towards sensation. Recall that while Locke's entire first chapters on his essay were actually an assault on the Cartesian idea of innate ideas that were all the rage on the planets. Thus, if what's to be in the mind must first be in the senses, sort of radical empiricism, studying sensation as process and experience must be foundational for any philosophy of mind. And in the generation that followed, just such studies blossomed, often starting with the most basic sensations, especially pleasure and pain. Entire structures of human sensation, consciousness, subjectivity, even morality, looking at you, Bentham, were erected around these basic pushes and pulls of the nerves of the human body and their experience and sensation. Of those studies that emerge, particularly romantic interest in the experience of beauty, an experience often linked to human reproduction via sexuality, with a consensus of that being the most fundamental of all pleasures emerged. But in those explorations of sensation associated with beauty, something strange, even unsettling, became clear. There was something like a sensation of beauty associated with pleasure, but a kind of dark twin of beauty. Beauty in a way, but born out of pain, out of anguish. Describing the vast mountains of the Alps, Joseph Addison would contend that their beauty was a kind of agreeable kind of horror. That dark sensation was denoted as the sublime, and it would receive its most sustained early analysis in Edmund Burke's 1756 A Philosophical Inquiry into the Origins of Our Ideas of the Sublime and the Beautiful, somehow a completely British-named book. Burke's analysis, of course, informed by previous philosophers and artists, hinged on the mutually exclusive origins of the sensation of beauty and of the sublime. Beauty emerges from pleasure. It's linked with self-preservation via sexuality. Beauty is light, delicate, smoothly curving, relatively small, cute, sweet, fragrant, sonorous, graceful, elegant, symmetrical, soft, lush in color, with gradual variation and refinement. You know, Downton Abbey, Bridgerton vibes. Not so the sublime. Unlike beauty born from pleasure, the sensation of the sublime was born from the tensing of our nerves within our bodies, our eyes clenched, our imaginations crushed under some horrible immensity. The sublime was born from pain. For Burke, the passion associated with the sublime emerges from our contact with the overwhelming power of nature in pure astonishment with some degree of horror, as he has it. In the sensation of the sublime, our mind is so overawed that only the sublime fills our mind. It throttles our reason, it drives us as a taskmaster, it robs us of conscious thought and activity. Burke then continues a blow-by-blow proto-phenomenological analysis of the characteristics of the sublime, creating a veritable checklist of the fundamental ingredients in the creation of the lighter Gothic aesthetic. And as such, here is a rare case where philosophy at some level truly does inform art. The Gothic at some level is the Burkean sublime willfully distilled into literature, art, music, and film. And thus, the sublime is founded upon natural terror, uncontrolled fear born from the tremendous power which inspires just that passion. The vastness of a mountain, the blackness of a night, the titanic swelling of the sea in tumult, a storm relentlessly bearing down with hail and rain and lightning. And yet, this horrible magnitude is also met with terrible obscurity. The sublime is just beyond our full ability to grasp it. It hides in the dark and in the shadows and the gloomy pomp of the Miltonian hell, the inner darkness of forgotten temples or caverns deep within the earth. Thus, the sublime has its mirth in darkness, gloom, confusion, mania, and obscurity. Despite that obscurity, the sublime is terrible in its power and threatens to annihilate not only us and our consciousness, but life itself. It's the horrible power of unpredictable vengeance from the gods, the tremendous violence of the divine, as Job is chastised toward the end of that book. Power with nothing of reason, nothing of care, no mercy, and no restraint. And yet the sublime can also be sensed in the vastness of privation, of emptiness, of vacuity, and of silence, solitary, vast nothingness. It is that vastness, especially the vastness of infinity, the vastness perhaps of eternal cosmic gulf, the streaming eternities of space and time in which all human proportion becomes meaningless, laughable even. You getting those Lovecraft vibes yet? Barring such infinities, vast structures, including human structures, can also inspire the sublime. For Burke, magnificence wrought in stone, from the megaliths of the especially primeval world to mansions, castles, and churches, all inspire a sense of grandeur, magnificence of some other thing than us, something larger than our individual smallness and relative unimportance. The sense of the sublime is especially fired in witnessing such grand structures destroyed, witnessing their ruins, that even such vast human architecture ultimately stands no chance against decay, time, and the historical violence of the convulsions of revolution. This is truly history as horror in the mind of the human being. Light can also be sublime, but not the soft life of illumination associated with beauty, rather the random flickering of light and dark, the violent appearance of lightning. The sublime is as always as hypnotic as it is dazzling. Orally, the sonic landscape of the sublime is one of intense variation, vast echoes in the deep, thunder, artillery, raging storms, but also the nocturnal sounds of creatures, especially nocturnal predators, such as the owl, the bat, and the wolf, all inspire some sense of dread in us, waiting for the dawn. The temporality of the sublime is also staccato. It is sudden, unexpected, unpredictable, intermittent. The sublime is the jump scare rendered into existential reality. Even the smell of the sublime may be drawn from ashes, the stench of blood, the sensation of insects crawling about our skin, the taste of bitter wormwood, the smell of rotting food and flesh. All in all, the Burkean sublime is the dark, dread sister of beauty, born from pain and astonished horror. Now, I know what all of y'all out there are saying, but I take pleasure in a lot of that stuff. That's just the kind of stuff in horror films. That's pleasurable to me. It's not born of any kind of pain. That's because most of us have never actually experienced the sublime, because civilization is mostly about insulating us from nature and thus the principal efficient cause of the sublime as an experience. So what are we experiencing when we experience this sort of lovely, though perverse pleasure in horror? We're experiencing what Bert actually calls delight. This is the emotional arousal akin to the sublime, but stripped of any real power to actually harm us. This pseudo-sublime is terror defamed. It's horror curated. A painting of a mountain, a monster on film, a graveyard visit, but with none of the real grief of actually mourning a loved one. This is the no-touch haunted house. It's the sublime as a safe word. And yet, there is delight in it, we have to be honest. There's mirth in this pseudo-sublime. There's pleasure in something of the danger, the horror, the darkness, and the gloom over there on a screen. on canvas. And that pleasure, that delight, as Burke has correctly diagnosed and detailed it, was already apparent to a small cadre of poets and writers and artists around the mid-17th century. But it would be Horace Walpole's 1764 Castle of Otranto that would actually actionize the Burkean sublime self-consciously into a literary form as Gothic and the Gothic horror we all know and love. But while the Burkean sublime is an essential element for the development of the Gothic and Gothic horror, a few other outstanding elements are incredibly important, essential as well. The first and foremost is the name for the aesthetic, the Gothic. With the rise of the 15th century humanists, the term Goth and Gothic, but historically these were Germanic tribes which migrated west in the 4th and 5th centuries. They were refugees from the invasions of the Huns. The term Gothic became associated with the greatest of all nightmares in European history, the destruction of the Roman Empire. Thus, for the humanists of the 15th century, the Goths and Gothic were responsible for basically the destruction of civilization and were associated with all the horrible things with that. Barbarity, darkness, the Dark Ages, if you've heard of that, and violent decadence. So too, the arts, architecture, philosophy, religion, and even the magic prior to the 15th century were considered by the humanists to be terrible Gothic reminders of all that was lost in the fall of Rome. Thus, for a need for a rebirth, a renaissance of classical values, literature, Latin, architecture, religion, and yeah, even in magic. There was even a magical reform to reject the old Gothic grimoire demonic magic that they associated with blackness and darkness. And while that kind of denigration of the Goths might have been fine for the Italians, other emergent powers, especially the English, trace their descendants directly back not to the Romans, the Roman Britons, but precisely to those refugees, the immigrant Anglo-Saxons, the Angles and Saxons and the Jews. And from Jordanes in the 6th century to Whig reformers in the 18th, the Goths were in much need of a makeover. They needed some good old-fashioned revisionism. Not destructive, but the vigorous Northern European answer to Mediterranean decadence. Not barbarian warlords, but egalitarian parliamentarians. Not the destroyers of civilization, but architects, from the megalithic Stonehenge to the vast cathedrals filled with divine light. Not uneducated brutes, but the ancient Druids were reimagined as philosophers and proto-scientists with the magic of their hieroglyphic runes. This trend, by the way, continues all the way down to today, with virile, tattooed, hunky Vikings made to be the corrective for the decadent Roman Christianity, which is all mostly free of any actual pesky history. But of course, the rehabilitation of the Goths was decidedly mixed. Woven into this narrative was that of the Anglo-Saxons immigrating and fighting for liberty. For liberty. This was a mythology that Thomas Jefferson would actually even adopt in his 1774 A Summary View of the Rights of British America, which actually became the sort of first draft for the Declaration of Independence. So this whole Gothic revisionism thing, it's kind of baked into this country as well. Especially, by the way, liberty against Roman tyranny in the form of the Catholic Church. Of course, against the Catholic Church. And thus, the Protestant Reformation was given a kind of Gothic sensibility. But not only that, the violent closure of the monasteries and the iconoclasm that took place primarily in Northern Europe, especially in England, were given a pride of place in this Gothic recuperation. It wasn't enough to shatter statues and smash stained glass and burn those churches for the radical iconoclasts. No, they left the ruins of popery and Roman superstition for all to marvel at in dread. Now, this all creates a kind of interesting historical paradox that to this day the UK is littered with the ironic remains of medieval Gothic architecture in magnificent ruins, destroyed precisely in the Gothic spirit of resisting the tyranny of the Roman Church. Of course, we shouldn't expect any of this mythological, revisionistic history to be rational or based on anything historical. In fact, as far as I can tell, it's mostly just vibes. But this reclamation and recuperation of all things Gothic, especially by the Whigs, as opposed to the austere neoclassicism of the aristocratic Tories, went more beyond paradoxical myth-making. art filled with jaunts through ruined abbeys, gardens became filled with faux ruins called follies, and the neo-Gothic eventually became all the rage in English architecture. And as for Horace Walpole, he was an early adopter, maybe one of the earliest adopters of all things Gothic, but also of the particular delights in all things Burkean and sublime. And he was also the first minister of the Whig Party, so he had a bunch of money to do all that. Indeed, after he purchased his home at Chopped Straw Hill and began to renovate it along what would now be recognized as something like Neo-Gothic style, he would rename it Starbury Hill, along with additions of the architectural elements that became known as the Gothic style. Really, Walpole innovated a lot of that stuff. He also packed his home with stained glass, pictures of saints, old suits of armor, antique swords and weapons, animal hides, and the like. With wallpaper he had made to look like bare stone walls, he even sought to make his home to be a kind of lived-in, living ruin, something between an ancient abbey, a cathedral, and a castle. That aesthetic, the aesthetic he sought to generate with all this old armor and Gothic flair, he termed gloomth. Gloomth, a cross between gloomy and perhaps Gothic. Perhaps, no doubt, the precursor to what we now call the aesthetic of goth today. I don't know, it was like Joy Division, but with harpsichords. In Walpole, this Gothic palingenesis was met with the Burkean delight of the sublime, as wed, unsurprisingly, in a gloomy dream. That dream would become the nucleus of the Castle of Otranto, a Gothic story first published on Christmas Eve, 1764, as part of the English tradition of telling ghost stories that very night. And it was an instant hit, leaving readers astonished and getting an immediate second edition that following year. The Castle of Otranto began a literary tradition that exploded in the later 18th century, especially among women writers, and has continued unabated down to this day. Gothic horror had arrived. The novella takes the form of a pseudo-translation from a 13th century medieval telling of the tale, a conceit that Walpole would eventually abandon in the second edition. However, he makes his influences very clear. It is medieval romance, Shakespeare, and the Burkean sublime. Oh yeah, I told you that Bill would make a reappearance. Bill Shakespeare, as I've mentioned before, developed the world of Hamlet, and Hamlet has gone down as something of the first instance of modern subjectivity, all broody and existential. But the world that Shakespeare created for the globe was just one chock full of murder and intrigue, antiquity, ponderous graveyards barely lit by torches, ghosts, fairies, witches, sorcerers, love, and of course doom. Pounds and pounds of tragedy. Without any doubt, Shakespeare plays a strong hand in the development of what will become the Proto-Gothic, but it being Walpole's intentional deployment of the Burkean sublime in a nearly textbook fashion, frankly, that would see the genre created in the Castle of Otranto. Now, I hate to disappoint you, but I'm not going to summarize it, because you should go read it, and summaries on the internet just become an excuse not to read things, and we don't do that here. So, read it. But to suffice to say, you get everything in this novella. You get phantasmagoria, dreamlike catastrophes. Yes, there is a giant helmet that falls from the sky, maybe even from the moon. Demented passion, secret passageways, a haunted castle replete with paintings that come to life and move around, demented love triangles and transgressive desires, all set within the constant gloom, sometimes pitch black darkness, raging storms, and melodrama as thick as it comes, all in the end of a titanic ruin to everything foretold in an ancient prophecy. The pacing is frantic. There's actually even an absence of quotation marks to intentionally drive on the sense of fury in the narrative. The fates of castles and kings are all at stake. The plot reverses in upon itself over and over like a good soap opera, and the claustrophobic castle, abbey, secret passageways, and crypts all become a vast character unto themselves. And atop all of that, virtually every horror movie trope is born in the Castle of Otranto, from the jump scare to sudden gusts of wind that blow out the one candle that she has in the darkness, the rampaging, demented father of The Shining, The cries of nocturnal beasts, the dark and stormy night, the decrepit, ancient, haunted house, the near-ruined castle, lit only by torches and candles, the horrible secret, and of course, the doom that none can escape. It's all forged by Walpole in the Castle of Otranto, and it's not surprising that the book spawned an entire genre, an entire lifestyle, frankly, going into 10 further editions by the end of the 18th century. But is it worth reading? In his introduction to the Oxford World Classics edition, Nick Groom describes the book as striking modern readers as ludicrous and unreadable. And I've read a good many reviews online after I read it, and there's basically universal agreement that it's kind of hard to get through. And to be honest, I can't say that I found it terribly compelling as a read, though I'm also the kind of person that enjoys reading the Silmarillion, and I've repeatedly failed to read the entirety of The Lord of the Rings. I mean, I still get 150 page in, and I'm like, why are they still walking around in the Shire, and who's Tom Bombadil? What? At any rate, I do think that any horror film, any goth, anyone interested in the occult should give Burke's a philosophical inquiry into the origin of our ideas of the sublime and the beautiful. You should give it a read for his analysis of the opposition of the beautiful and the sublime. Also, I should say that you philosophy folks, I see you back there, lurking in the back, Burke's empirical analysis of the sublime was on Kant's hit list, Kant the assassin, Kant's hit list in the Third Critique, so it's kind of necessary reading for y'all too, me too. Then, after you've read Burke, do your best to make it through the Castle of Otranto. It's not that long, all things told, it's 6 long chapters. And in fact, use Burke's list of the aspects of the sublime as like a bingo card. Or a drinking game to keep you going, to keep you reading it. And no, you should not do that. You will end up blackout drunk. That thing is too damn gothic. But there's something rewarding to get out the philosophical foundations of a genre, of an entire genre, the genre of gothic horror that so many of us know and love, and experience the first expression of that genre, despite the fact that it, might not have aged all that well. We're not all Black Sabbath in the end. And if nothing else, you can just go find in them the tools to up your Gloomth game. We all need to up our Gloomth game. So you can go full metagoth with Burke and Walpole as your spiritual ancestors. More on the Gothic, more on the development of this kind of sense of horror at the level of philosophy itself. But I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and thank you for watching Esoterica, where we explore the arcane in history, philosophy, and religion. It was the height of the Enlightenment, reason reigning supreme, when in the summer of 1758, André Morellet was visiting a friend, actually a high-ranking church official over in Rome, pursuing the shelves of his host, as I am sure all of us out there want to do, without the least bit of judgment, of course. His eye caught a vast tome in folio. Ominously, the spine read, Directorium Inquisitorum, a church institution that still struck horror, still strikes horror. It evokes images of torture, dank dungeons, and burning flesh. And upon opening it, he was revolted with what he saw. The presumption of guilt and even demonic possession of suspected heretics. Instructions for deceiving those suspects into confessing that meant excruciating death, and detailed instructions for when and how to apply torture that could only end in just those confessions. To share his disgust and contempt for what he took as the worst excesses of the medieval religious depravity that Enlightenment people so despised, he published excerpts of the Inquisitor's manual, in 1762. The men of the Enlightenment referred to the text as a monument of atrocity and ridiculousness, and Voltaire realized that Candide should have killed a few more than just one inquisitor. And a few decades later, over in America, Edgar Allan Poe would include the Directorium Inquisitorum in his litany of shocking and horrible volumes, pondered by those within the walls of the doomed house of Usher. Alongside Malleus Maleficarum, the work of the 14th century Catalan Inquisitor Nicholas Emmerich came to represent absolute horror, the absolute horrors of human cruelty manifest by religious dogma run amok. Indeed, it took none less than Mein Kampf to steal that satanic throne from Malleus and from the Directorium of Emmerich. But shock and disgust are not education, and only education can actually prevent those horrors from re-emerging. Thus, to understand the Directorium Inquisitorum, we must turn back to the Inquisition of the 14th century. Here we'll see the Inquisition in transition from its triumph over the Cathars to extend its reach into emergent other so-called heresies and to becoming an enduring European religious institution. Indeed, the most decisive extension of the Inquisition will be the addition of magic to the realm of heresy, one that would set the stage for the witch trials of the early modern period. Let's explore the Inquisition of the 14th century, specifically by studying these manuals of the Inquisition that bookend the 14th century, the Practica Inquisitationis Hereticae Pravitatis of Bernard Guy, completed sometime around 1325, and the increasingly horrible Directorium Inquisitorum of Nicholas Emmerich, completed around 1376. If you're interested in the history of magic, Hermetic philosophy, alchemy, Kabbalah, or just the history of things like this and the occult, make sure to subscribe here to Esoterica and check out my numerous other content on topics in esotericism. Also, if you want to support work like this, long-form, scholarly, accessible, and free content on topics in esotericism here for free on YouTube, I'd hope you consider supporting my work over at Patreon with a one-time donation. You can use the super thanks below the video, you can pick up some cool black metal merch, and you can support the channel making long-form content like this. I mean, I didn't exactly mean to make an hour-plus video on the 14th century Inquisition, but it happened. And if you want to support work like that, take a look at my Patreon. But now to the manuals of the Inquisition of the 14th century, the Inquisition that saw the burning of Joan of Arc, the execution of the last Cathars, the immolation of Marguerite Perret, and the persecution and suppression of the Templars, and the heretifaction, the making of heresy of magic itself. I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and welcome to Esoterica, where we explore the arcane in history, philosophy, and religion. As you might have guessed, this episode is actually the second in our series on the origins and developments of the medieval Inquisition. Now, you might want to go check out that first episode either to better inform this one, or you can check it out afterwards to get a more full vision of how the Inquisition developed prior to this episode that takes place primarily in the 14th century. But this episode does basically pick off where the other one left off, and it covers the rise of the medieval Inquisition. Now, to clear up any confusion, which seemed rather endemic, weirdly enough, in the comment section last time, and before the ninth person leaves the Monty Python joke, this is a series about the medieval Inquisition. The medieval one. Not the much later Spanish and Roman Inquisitions that began in the 16th century. This episode spanned the Inquisition as it was in the 14th century, the 1300s. That's about 200 years prior to the rise of the Spanish and Roman Inquisitions. Also, while the Spanish and Roman Inquisitions were truly affairs of state, they were state-backed and all the more horrible for it, it would be wrong to think of the medieval Inquisition as a fully institutionalized office of either the church or the state at this period. Rather, around this time, it's better to think of inquisitions as more of ad hoc sorties, little battles against perceived heresy in a region, with some of them being more or less institutionalized, though as we'll see by the end of the 14th century, institutionalization of the Inquisition will certainly be on the agenda. Also, just a note on my use of the word heresy for this episode. I'm going to be using the terms heresy and heretic from the point of view of the Inquisition, which puts me in a weird position. But rather than just saying all the time so-called heresy and so-called heretic every single time I want to use that term, I'm certainly not on team medieval church, much less on team Inquisition, God forbid, and I don't want my language use to muddle that fact. I'm literally making episodes like this, content like this, in the hopes that we can learn from history and actively resist the combination of church and state, which some hideous morons in this country are flirting with again, along with resisting any form of social power which stems from basically medieval conspiracy theories. It's, in fact, even arguable to what extent some of these heresies existed in the medieval period in the first place. So, again, I use the term heretic and heresy as just a shorthand, and definitely not an endorsement of anything argued in this episode. But as we saw last time, the medieval Inquisition, or rather the technical title of the time, the Inquisitio Hereticae Pravitatis, the investigation into heretical depravity, the heretics were depraved, it's an ironic title if you ask me, evolved primarily in order to suppress both alleged duelists in the region of southern France and northern Italy, known to history now as the Cathars, as much as they really existed, but also other radical Catholics who took the spiritual importance of apostolic poverty of central and literal, very literal value with the poverty. The Waldensians and eventually the spiritual Franciscans, along with the even later apostolic brethren, or the pseudo-apostles as they're known to the Inquisition, argued that literal poverty, radical poverty, was a sine qua non of Christian piety, and that the church had basically betrayed all that for pomp and luxury and decadence. I mean, St. Francis did tell the Pope that Peter had no silver and gold any longer. What a bamf. So much so that the apostolic brethren actually held that the Church of Rome was basically the Antichrist. In order to deal with these renegade movements, the church actually first employed Cistercian preachers to properly educate the population, and then eventually they began to incorporate some of these preachers of poverty into the church as the mendicant orders, the begging poor orders, especially the Franciscans and the Dominicans, who the Dominicans would themselves go on to become the shock troops of the early Inquisition. However, following the assassination of a papal legate in 1208 and the blatant desire on the part of northern lords for southern land in France, the Albigensian Crusade was launched from 1209 to 1229 and proved to be a horrifying bloodbath of siege and massacre of civilians in the Languedoc that is difficult to describe. And it was in the aftermath of that nightmare that a new nightmare began. The Inquisition sought to root out and destroy any remaining vestiges of heresy in the region in the 50 years that followed, with the last Cathar Prefectus being burned alive in the autumn of 1321. Again, if you want more of a primer on the origins and the mechanisms by which the early Inquisition operated, you're going to want to check out the first episode in this series, because you need to know more about that stuff, because it's horrifying.